Okay, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the first ever edition of the Herdcast, where a bunch of idiots sit around talking about incredibly dorky shit in a way that doesn't make any sense. With me today, I have Adam.
Hello.
That's Adam. I have JugHead.
Hello?
I have André.
I am the ghost, and you will soon see why.
Okay, get used to that. He doesn't stop. I have James.
Uh,
Yeah. Okay.
Shame.
And I have Henry.
God help us all.
Yes, indeed. And last but, well, possibly least, depending on your viewpoint in the world for various reasons, Amy.
I take slight offense at that.
You should. You should. Yeah, so anyway, starting us off today, what have you been doing with yourself recently, Adam?
Well, this week, because I have very little variety in what I do with myself in terms of nerd culture, I have been Pokemoning. I bred myself the perfect Onix in Pokemon X and Y.
Ugh.
Been playing yet more Team Fortress 2. I got the perfect 40 pounds gun drop, and I spent that on more Steam shit. And finally, I have been playing more Magic the Gathering, and I've concocted a Child of Lara commander deck. But more interesting than that is what's been happening in the Magic the Gathering sub-bubble this week.
Oh, Jesus. Yeah, fill us in on that.
Well, basically, this week there was a Grand Prix Richmond, which was the largest Grand Prix ever held, where like the world's best Magic the Gathering players all come together in a convention hall and play the game. One particular person who looks like a fusion of Jon Snow and Samwell Tarly from Game of Thrones went
Obviously.
behind the larger members of the convention, shall we say, and in a very pensive pose took a picture of a selfie of himself with the ass crack of the subject near him, and there was no less than 30 of these photos.
oh, yeah,
30.
I saw that too.
Yeah, oh, Jesus.
That's
And then he posted
yeah.
it to Reddit. It was uploaded to the front page, and then
Yeah.
Wizards of the Coast, who owns Magic the Gathering, had to do three
That's
things.
fantastic.
Number one, remind all players of basic personal hygiene at tournaments.
Oh.
Number two, remind people of behavioral standards at tournaments. And number three, ban the guy who corrupted their brand with 30 ass cracks.
That's 30 ass cracks, just for scale, that's 60 individual butt cheeks.
Yeah, yeah, tremendous sense of value there. The thing that astonishes and terrifies me is that the first thing they did right off the bat was come in on the hygiene. Like, what did they see in these ass cracks?
I mean, in fairness, if you've ever been to like anywhere where Magic the Gathering or something similar
Oh, God,
is
weren't
being
cute,
held,
Tom. Yeah,
the
they
place
were-
does stink. I mean, even when we get together, the place stinks, frankly.
But they surely they couldn't get the
Guys.
stink from the photographs.
I have to say there is, in terms of what they saw, there is, I think it was Nietzsche who once said, if you stare long enough into the arse crack gazes back into you.
With its one eye. No, oh God, it's already
No,
off.
it's
Okay.
not
Well, it's like
nasty.
a void, you know? If you think about it.
Yeah,
You stare
yes,
into the
right,
void
it
and
is
void will
literally
stare
the
back.
absence of something. The absence of bottom.
Anyway,
Yeah, well, no, you know the hole is like the void. So you look
dear.
into it, it stares back at you because the void
Oh,
does.
dear.
It wasn't quite that bad, Ray.
It's
It
like
was...
enter-
anyway, okay.
Well, before we delve into the structure of the rectum, which I think of any of us, doesn't matter. Who's next?
Yeah, it was pretty wild. To be honest, I don't think they had to ban him.
No, I think they had a need to protect their brand. I mean, this was put in Reddit, like literally millions of people, most of whom had probably no exposure to Magic the Gathering, and this was their first
It's good
insight into it.
advertisement.
And like recently, they've made a push for like bringing new people in with their like the new Jules, the Planeswalkers,
Oh, yeah,
and
no,
they
it
recently
was
gave
a-
Warner
it was a
Brothers the
sign.
rights to Magic the Gathering film. Like they're trying to bring new people into the fold,
Oh,
and
dear
30
me.
It
ass
was a
cracks aren't
cyber
helping.
this decision, but the damage was already done.
Oh, yeah.
Banning,
No, but I mean,
banning
by that
him
logic-
has only added to the
People do,
profitability of it.
But banning someone would like what's the opposite of encourage? Discourage. Sorry,
There we
would
go.
discourage future behavior like this.
He's going to be a doctor, folks.
In
That's why I know the
fairness,
structure of the rectum in
Oh.
ridiculous detail.
Jesus Christ.
if you were, I would say, in order to do something that's actually that funny, because I actually was pretty original, pretty funny. I think the guy probably doesn't mind the ban too much.
It was worth.
It was worth.
I'm not sure. I think he had something like 50 Planeswalker points, which is quite a lot. but I'm not entirely sure on that.
I don't understand the ranking system or anything, but
All right. Well, basically, the people they become tournaments, if they win things, they give them Planeswalker points, which you can like expand on invitations to higher tournaments, or you can or you'll get new cards every time they're released and stuff. It's to encourage tournament attendance and stuff, and the system works really well.
What nerds?
Well, encourages people to go to Magic the Gathering tournaments. So if that's your aim, it works well.
Well, if you're the person who's selling Magic the Gathering cards, it works pretty well.
Yes, the bastards. Oh god, they're up there along with Games Workshop for these incredibly profitable but just terrifying business models.
I think the worst in Games Workshop, because Wizards of the Coast only has to print things on paper and charge 50 for it. Because Games Workshop, it does have to deal with like oil prices and stuff to make plastics.
Yeah, and sometimes the weight of like if it's metal figurines, that's good metal.
I mean, if anything, the price of paper can only go down.
Oh, right.
Not only good time, but...
Right.
And as well. So, Andre, what have you been up to this week, and or earlier than that? Because why the fuck not?
Okay, well, since we're mainly focusing on this week, I basically started touching radiation for the first time in my life this week. It was a phenomenal experience. Essentially, one of the guys was like, hey, dude, check this out. This is awesome radiation. You're going to need to use this for lab work. But this is a really cool thing. Essentially, it was a lens. Behind the lens is just what they say is a crystal. I call this scintillation crystal, whatever it is. When alpha particles hit the scintillation crystal, it makes a light, and you can see it through the lens. So I tried looking at it and stuff, couldn't see anything. And I say, yeah, no, there's a little bit of a source at the back of it. You should be able to see it. Saw nothing, kept on looking at it, kept on staring at it, kept on looking, and thought, no, there's got to be something wrong with this. Had a look. No, it turned out the entire thing was radioactive. Everything was radioactive. I put the whole thing in my eye. Next day, my eyes were aching. Hopefully, I think it might only be because of sinus. I hope so.
Okay,
Yeah,
Adam,
that's
as our
weird.
trainee doctor,
I
how
was
much
gonna
cancer
make-
does Andre now have?
yeah, I was gonna make a bunch of jokes, but now I don't feel like I want to anymore. Well done.
Well, that was quite fun. And then other than
Oh, God. Oh,
Yeah.
And then, so I basically got loads of alcohol, tried to taste some. It's not that great. It's not like the alcohol you drink.
It's like an alien. It's like we've brought a fucking alien from space to Earth, and we're interviewing him about his first week among humans.
It's like lab grade stuff. They call it propanol or something.
Oh my
So,
god.
I tried that.
Isopropyl alcohol.
Yeah, well, isopropyl. Blah, 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 blah.
Fucking nerds.
Anyway,
Okay, what have you been playing? What have you been playing?
now this is sad. So I've been a bit bored. I played a few games. Nothing interesting. There are a lot of indie games coming out recently, especially in the horror genre. I think by the end of this year there will be a lot of interesting indie games in that genre. Genre. But unfortunately, none of them are out yet. They are all horrible Amnesia rip-off kind of indie games.
The
So-
only Amnesia sort of inspired thing I'm excited for is Alien Isolation, which looks
Yes.
amazing. But we don't really know anything about that yet.
Yeah, of
It's
course.
amazing.
Is that of the Alien franchise, or?
Yes.
Oh,
It's
okay.
basically an Amnesia
Really?
style game. They're going back to the roots of the very first film, where basically you could barely fight it and just had to try and stay away from it, which is just gonna be so much scarier.
Yeah,
And that's an indie game?
No.
Okay, that makes sense.
I was just about to say. It sounds much too clever to be a AAA title.
Yeah, I
I
don't have
mean-
a triple A. I don't the A system doesn't make any sense.
But also, what's about was like the idea of giving the Alien franchise to an indie developer.
I do
Like-
like
Oh
that.
yeah, of course.
They couldn't
That's
squirt
fair
enough
point.
money out of that.
Oh my goodness. JugHead still isn't back?
No, I can explain what happened to him. We have discovered, as in like a minute ago, that he doesn't understand what our RAM is and allocating enough RAM to programs. So whenever Skype is running, if he tries to open certain images on the internet, his laptop crashes.
Oh,
That is not an exaggeration. That was literally what happened. He tried to go on Imgur after a link, and potentially that puppy you linked us. But
probably. Maybe I nuked him with the puppy.
then again, most of the internet is people linking other people puppies.
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
Moving.
Yeah.
Actually, it's more kittens, like the one I'm holding right now.
Well, small domestic mammals.
They're not
Fair.
kittens. They're like 2 years old at least.
They're 2 in May. Shut up. They're still kittens to me.
But yes, anyway, so for the game I've been playing this week, there was a game I played for about 4 years, starting around 8 years ago, called World of Warcraft.
People may not have heard of that.
I bet no one's ever heard of that. Now, the thing is, it continued to stay very popular, despite it being so extremely old, despite Guild Wars 2 being released, despite everything that tried to have a go at it. Everything just fell in the mud, and World of Warcraft still came out on top. So I thought, well, why is this? So I decided earlier this week, or I think it was the beginning of last week actually, to just have a little go, see what's going on. Why did things change so much? Got a 10-day free trial, why not? And unfortunately, I am now addicted.
Yeah,
I've
heard
That'll
that can
happen.
happen. Who was talking about the crazy Pokemon style, the pet fighting thing they've put in?
Now that is a fantastic addition. What Blizzard?
I've just come back in. Is that real pet fighting or did
It's in World of Warcraft.
It's
Oh, that's okay.
Warcraft,
That's a lot
and you
less
fight
terrible,
pets
I
like
guess.
Pokemon. It's really good. Now, essentially how this works, right? Blizzard decided, okay, well, we already have a very big game with a lot of culture in it, big maps. What you're going to do is we're just going to focus on what we have and improve everything a lot. Now, okay, graphics never improved, so you still have that terrible graphics. Apparently, they're going to improve it in the next expansion, not sure. But
that would take a lot of work.
now they have included like a pet fighting system. So you know the vanity pets you normally have with in any other MMO, you just have a little, I don't know, a cat or a bird following you around.
I'm sorry, you get a pet cat.
Oh yeah.
Calm down, Amy. You'd have to play an RPG.
Amy, you also actually own several pet cats.
You're probably
so
holding
the
one
ability
right
to
now.
simulate a pet cat. Really? So you're pretty much that's a step down really for you as a cat owner.
This is
Yeah,
true.
that's like a train driver playing Train Simulator 2014.
You know what?
Yeah,
I bet
pretty
they
much.
fucking do.
Sorry, can
Yeah.
we just analyze the fact that there are people who play Train Simulator in the first
No.
place?
I think that's
The
going to be
most
a whole
popular
topic.
one-
The simulator
The most
kind of
popular one is
became
Farming
something-
Simulator.
Yeah, the training simulator, like the simulator games, are they a joke? Is that what's going on there?
You see, what I find interesting is that they're almost all from Germany. Like, does Germany have some kind of weird, like I think it's like some kind of like they have some work play subculture where people enjoy working, and so
Oh,
whenever
God.
they go to work, they must come home. They must continue working, so they simulate work through video games. Is that the origin of it? Because they never stop.
Jesus Christ.
I guess that's where they
Germans.
rule the world.
Anyway, so André, you're completely hooked on World of Warcraft.
Yes, essentially.
Welcome to 8 years ago.
Did they ever hold that for? I mean, there was about
Sorry,
what was it, 2 years ago? World of Warcraft was just hemorrhaging customers, wasn't it?
Oh yeah, no, it's
Oh,
bollocks.
yes. I mean,
Is that still going on? Is that like?
Yes, yeah, no, it's been drained.
It's-
But who knows?
it's
And it's still got more than anyone else.
and the thing is, yeah, now I've realized they're also trying to simplify things a lot, which I'm not sure how to react to that. But I guess we'll see how it works.
Yeah, anyway, very good. So, JugHead, let's have another go. What have you been
Yeah,
up to this
sorry,
week?
I dropped out there. Yeah. What have I been up to this week? My week has involved a sudden influx of Pokemon. Pokemon has it's just suddenly come back into life, and I guess in a way that it's come back into a lot of people's life with Twitch plays Pokemon. It kind of got me hooked a little bit
Oh
again.
god, yeah, this
Yeah.
fucking exercise.
Twitch,
in
I mean,
social
everyone
chaos.
knows what Twitch is, but or what Twitch plays Pokemon is. But yeah, firstly, which I suspect was someone savvily monitoring Google Trends and things happening. Netflix added all of the original, well, not all of the original, some of the original Pokemon episodes to Netflix.
Oh, they added the first season of Pokemon ever, as in the Pokemon anime that we watched as kids and were too enthralled by the colors, especially the Porygon episode, and also the last 2 seasons released, which were, well, the ones in Europe at least, and they were the last 2 black and white ones, because the X and Y anime isn't in English yet because Japan. But
You said you said Japan, Adam. They have to take time to dub the episodes.
well, yeah, but like the anime started before X and Y were released.
Oh, right.
Yeah, well, I guess there was like terrible fan dubs, but like then again, Netflix would never put terrible fan dubs on.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
always wonder why people do that, especially for major franchises. what is the point in fandoming it when it's going to be dubbed
Horrible,
very,
yeah.
very shortly afterwards?
What's
I
the
mean,
you know
point
what's
in
a scary
dubbing any
thing?
of it?
Do you know what's a scary thing? People watch that. And in large numbers. There are so many people who actually prefer watching dubbed versions.
there's only one
Right,
situation.
we're not going to get into an anime casuals conversation. Please,
So I think we
It's not
should
just yet.
organic
God.
evolution of conversation.
Wait, guys, I have something to say.
Oh no, but just the anime, the ridiculous sub-dubbed infighting
Well,
in anime.
Okay, let's not take it to anime. Instead, the most ridiculous voice dub that I ever came across was people who were literally dubbing all of Homestuck, the ridiculous webcomic.
You know
Oh,
what?
what? No
That's a
way.
lot,
You know what? I'm
That's a
intrigued
lot to
by
sound
that.
dub.
I know, right? Like the sheer hive mind that is Tumblr are working together to get fan voice actors for all the characters,
God, I
and they're
want-
actually going through the thousands and thousands of pages that comprise Homestuck and giving just all of it, audio files and putting it all on YouTube. It is terrifying.
But
we can't admit we like Homestuck
So, like, hang
in
on.
a podcast. We can't do that. We don't like Homestuck. We're cool.
No,
Or-
okay.
You sound cool.
Shut up.
Oi,
That's why they
oi,
call
oi,
it the
I
Dork
resent
Report.
that.
No, we don't. Henry.
What I was going to say is, in terms of weird fan dubbing, I don't really get it on major releases. The only thing that to me makes sense that I heard got fan dubbed is there's a series of books, I think called the Malazan Books of the Fallen, which are quite popular in terms of major heavy-hitting fantasy series, but unaccountably no audiobooks for them. So a bunch of fans just, it takes one guy who just sits down and reads the book. I released them as fan dubs, but then eventually people sort of lobbied enough that the actual audiobooks came out. But I can only really understand why people wouldn't bother for the sake of things that are too obscure to justify them ever financing a dub.
Yeah. But I don't know, with Homestuck, how do you justify any of the things that Homestuck fans do?
I think Homestuck is unfortunate in that some of its fans are just Tumblr in general, which is an unfortunate culture to be hooked on. Because there's no such thing as a normal Homestuck fan.
No, I've never met one.
No.
And I've met...
Homestuck is something that I've actually managed to avoid through all my times on the internet,
Oh,
and
you'd
I've never
hate it.
seen
I
it.
just know you'd hate it.
Thankfully.
Yeah.
I mean,
Anyways.
the thing about it is... Actually, never mind.
Okay, then.
All right, well, I'm going to move on to the second part of my Pokemon-filled week, which is that we had a little bit of we've been having some fun with a little bit of an experimental Pokemon run on an emulator.
Oh god, that's
On an emulated on a fan hack of Pokemon Crystal, I think. What crystal is it? But we've been having some fun with the Dunsparce challenge. We've taken it upon ourselves, like a little group of us, to assign ourselves the shittiest, most obscure Pokemon we can.
Assign one
to
another.
the round.
No, not assign ourselves. Assign each other the shittiest party we can.
We each assign each other the one. I mean, my current team is what's my current team? My current team is Murkrow, Sunflora, Dunsparce, Lombre, Porygon, and Girafarig.
And
So
everyone,
I'm-
it was on to me to assign JugHead his party. And
Oh, yes.
JugHead, tell us what I had originally assigned you. It was just too much.
Originally, he gave me Ditto rather than Porygon, but it's too hard. Ditto is too bad. For anyone who kind of follows Pokemon a bit, in the 5th generation of Pokemon, they gave Ditto a better ability that actually made Ditto good. But this is before that. When Ditto's only attack is Transform. It has to take a turn to transform. It takes a hit, turns into a worse version of the thing it transformed into. It only has 5 PP for all the attacks. It's literally it was basically impossible to actually use Ditto just in a regular playthrough of Pokemon.
Having never played
I-
Pokemon, I find all of this fantastic.
Yeah.
In
And
all
also,
ways.
Amy, you too can appreciate how when someone lists their Pokemon in their team, and you don't know anything about Pokemon, it sounds like
Yeah.
they're having a stroke. Go
Yeah.
Flagon,
It's like,
Foop
Yeah, I've
Tag,
got
Pokemon,
Sildex,
Pokemon,
and
I was
Copenflagon,
assigned.
and a
Dakwack.
Borneo.
Oh,
So
God.
who else in McCall was also part of our ridiculous challenge? James, weren't you as well?
Yeah, I was assigned Mr. Mime, Dunsparce, Unknown, Shuckle, Nosepass, and Lunatone.
Unknown. Wow.
Given that I haven't played
Oh,
Pokemon
dear.
since Ruby and Sapphire, I have no idea about Nosepass, Shuckle, Lunatone, or Dunsparce.
Oh dear.
Although I think
Yeah.
Shuckle may have
Pokemon
been in
were
Ruby and Sapphire.
Well, actually, James, I'll tell you that your party currently defines the metagame. I mean, like Nosepass, frankly, Nosepass, he's a hard sweeper, and he counters. He's a hard counter to Shuckle.
Actually, James.
That can't be a real thing.
No, it's not a real thing. They're terrible Pokemon. They're never used.
Andre. Anyway, okay, who's next? James, what have you been doing with yourself lately?
In gaming terms, I've spent about the last week, 2 weeks, wiping out various Slavic states in Paradox Interactive's latest GSG, Europa Universalis 4.
You
Of
and
course.
Podcast with your fucking
Of
tournament
course.
geography simulators. Tell us about your adventures in fictional Eastern Europe, Ralph Fiennes.
Yes,
Well,
that was
of
James.
course, turning Byzantium from its 3-province decline into the super-state that it is, comprising the Balkans, Greece, Anatolia, most of Egypt, and now pressing into the Caucasus is rewarding in itself, but just watching Poland crumble, that's the real beauty.
As many
That's
great
what-
men have said
that's-
before.
That's the dream.
Jesus
I'm
Christ.
not sure.
As many of our listeners might be aware, there is currently turmoil in the Eastern Europe, and we're not referring to that.
We're not. Shockingly, we're referring to the numerous fictional turmoils that Jug and James
Yes, in
like
fact,
to
in my
turmoil themselves with.
game, in my current playthrough as Byzantium, in solidarity with the people of Ukraine, I released it from the
Yes!
Russian superstate.
We fixed Eastern Europe. Through
Let
the
it not be
video
said, we are
game.
flawed people.
See, video games are the cure for violence, not the other way around.
Hmm.
So is that all you've been up to recently?
Well, not really. I've been playing other things. I bought the big 70 quid bundle Planetary Annihilation for £16.
Ah, which seems like
Ooh,
good value.
it's a
when
good
you-
deal.
Why
It is a very good deal. It's a very, very fun game. It's even versus AI. I haven't played it online yet because I have no idea how it works yet.
Sorry, hang on. What game is this? I've just zoomed
Planetary
back in.
Annihilation. You know the thing that was advertised on
Oh,
Steam
yeah, yeah,
7
yeah,
months
that's
ago
right,
for
yeah.
70 quid. It was reduced to 16
Yeah, I
points
saw
at
it,
some
like-
point.
Huh?
Yeah.
it was very
So I
strange.
bought that. I do actually recommend it though, not
Not for 70
for the
quid.
price that it originally was. It's still unfinished in many regards, but it is fun just for how land, sea, and air all tie in, and how it is actually very difficult.
Oh shit me! I was kind of expecting it to be a giant, ridiculous train wreck, but what the
I
hell?
have to say,
it's-
and I know we'll be talking about this later on, but in terms of RTS games, Planetary Annihilation
Well,
is
there
one of
goes
the very
Jug again.
few ones that I'm actually paying any attention to that's coming out. I'm looking
Well,
I'm hoping
Yeah,
that it's good and
I'd say that's
succeeds.
because it's an old school RTS. It's a base builder.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, God.
Uh,
Yes.
the only old school thing for sex is the resource gathering. You essentially build a building on a resource node and you just cap it forever.
Yeah,
There's metal and energy. That's all the resources you use. There is the balance between making sure you're actually getting enough energy whilst building things, which is a bit confusing to me. It's not, you don't deplete it from a pool. It's a constant drain until the thing's built.
Oh
sort
god,
of
is
thing.
it like is it a bit like Startopia had, with the extraordinarily nebulous
yes.
and ephemeral connection between your power supply and your currency?
It is. It
That
is.
didn't really
quite.
make any-
Yeah.
Shall we take this opportunity to move on to the next person?
Yes,
And we get into the real meat of our podcast?
So, Henry, what have you been doing with yourself?
well, I would take offense to the idea that I'm not the real mate of the podcast. I am.
Henry, the real meat.
I am most certainly the real meat, and you guys are at best the bread.
Henry is best served medium rare.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
As
We are
indeed
the
always
bread
is.
of your
Ah,
meat.
at best.
Best.
I
What
mean,
am I? Am I some coleslaw? Is that what I am to you?
There we go.
no, I mean like
No one wants to
maybe
be coleslaw.
lettuce.
Like
Maybe
coleslaw.
lettuce.
Lettuce!
I don't think you get as far up as coleslaw.
Jesus
But,
Christ. Anyway,
So what I've been up to this week, I mean, you're gonna hate it, Martian.
Oh.
But I've been playing some League,
ah,
and also
get it over with.
I read a book the other day. I'm always trying to read more books. So I went through a book called Red Shirts the other day, which is a black comedy about the red shirts on a ship. And to anyone who doesn't know, redshirt is someone who joins the named cast and almost always dies, and their death is typically used as a plot device in an episode to show that there's danger around. So the book Redshirts was about the ensigns on a ship realizing that everyone who went on away missions with the captain and the chief medical officer and the chief engineer all mysteriously died, and the fatality ratings on their away missions was like 95%, and how they tried to deal with the issues. And I thought it was a really good book. It was quite funny, and actually got quite touching at the end as the characters attempted to deal with the implications of what being a red shirt meant.
God.
So it was actually really enjoyable for me, because typically I read things that are books and books and books long, and this just got in, got out, made its point, and was a nice little story. And it was narrated by Will Wheaton, who would definitely know a lot about red shirts.
It was written by Will Wheaton.
No, read by Will Wheaton.
Oh, wonder, Jesus Christ, Will Wheaton writes things? God.
No. Sorry, I listened to it.
Yeah.
The actual...
Henry
voice actor
doesn't have eyes.
Yeah, it's actually a serious problem.
No, Henry has eyes. Never mind. Okay.
Anyway,
Anything else?
So,
You can't see
what else
colour,
did
though.
this week? No major games. I played a little bit of the new Thief. Can't really say that I'm overly impressed. I'd say it's passable so far.
I've heard two people being positive about Thief. One of them was Total Biscuit, who isn't here today, sadly. And the other one was James.
Yeah, I thought Thief was quite well done. The older Thieves were a lot more combat oriented, but I like how Square Enix took it in the direction of you're not a super soldier. Like, you can't really fight these guys very well. You're a thief. You steal things and you skulk around. And if you have to kill people, you can shoot them. You can beat them with blackjacks and
that
stuff.
game
But
suits
you're
you very
generally
well,
not.
James.
You're generally not a formidable combat fighter. And
Yeah, isn't it sort of basically...
I like that element of it. I'm just like, not...
yeah, thematically it's strong, but there are some problems with the execution. I found for a game that's meant to be about climbing and hiding and things, it's quite sparse in locations where you're able to jump up and climb on things, and it gets a bit tedious where you have to try and look for the thing, and you're running around in the street. You're like, oh, I'm not actually a very good thief. Oh no.
Yeah,
that's
isn't it
what
pretty
I
much...
thought as well.
Pretty much
I
every
thought
inch
that-
of the game screams, "This is not Dishonored." You know?
Oh no. The game screams, "This is Dishonored." The problem
Oh,
is
There's a
fair enough.
plague,
that,
Martian. There's a plague.
Oh,
sweeping
never
the
mind.
city.
Holy shit.
yeah, and also
I don't think it
Dishonored
is.
in itself was a rip-off of Thief, so it's
Yeah, it's just a
yeah,
little
It's like-
Dishonored
it's
is-
like a-
they're very similar games.
It's a double Mobius reach around of copyright
Oh,
infringement.
we've got
Yeah.
to stop with the Homestuck. We'll be ostracized by everyone. Amy, what were you saying?
I was gonna say that, like, I don't think it is a rip-off Dishonored, like, just because it's like the steampunk thing again. Like, there's so many games that do that, so it's kind of like
Well, it's
not really.
it's
Yeah,
not
there's a
that-
plague, but there can be a plague at any point in any game ever.
Yeah, this is the thing. I don't think it's a rip-off. I think literally they just
Oh,
have
yeah,
the
yeah,
same
no,
idea at the same time.
the idea that you can't have plagues in games now because that's ripping off Dishonored is dumb. Like, it's just, it's very clear that they were games being developed at the same time or shortly after one another. Makers of Thief realized, oh, we might be in trouble. Dishonored has done, the supernatural ultra killer, and we're not doing that. But there are quite a lot of similarities, and I think that did cost them. They had to wind back certain things that they should have kept.
Yeah, I should say they probably deliberately toned back the combat to distance themselves from Dishonored. Unfortunate, but I think it's done okay. But I mean, unless maybe they've done the Lara Croft thing of we need to make $8 billion a second, or this will be a flop. But I don't know. I haven't heard any great compliments. Hopefully it's okay. But yeah, Henry, anything else you've been up to this week?
I don't think there's anything else that's particularly big. Nothing comes to mind. I have to say that going through red shirts made me feel really, really bad about the red shirts on board our Rogue Trader game.
Per noble
Ship.
bastards.
So I'm having an existential crisis about the fate of my own personal red shirts, but aside from that, nothing particularly important.
Oh yeah, who cares about an existential crisis?
Well, I mean, red shirts.
That's what they're for. Shirts
There's
are white
not
when
to
we
make reply. There's not to reason why. There's but to do and die.
Fuck me, this podcast just production value through the roof. We've got poetry, we've got all this shit going on. Amy, what have you been
All wait now is a girl, so Amy.
Oh, Amy!
Hi.
That's a glorious segue.
How's it
That
going?
was my shining moment. I'm willing to go with the highlight of this entire series.
Yeah, but well done. Well done. Yeah,
Thank
I've
you.
just been.
I bow silently.
Amy.
Well done. I've been playing Thief quite a bit, but I like it. But it kind of the way it's kind of done kind of annoys me. Like you're playing it and you get like a lot of information, and it's like, oh, this is awesome, this is so cool. And then ages where it's like, why am I walking around the street? What am I doing again? Where do I need to go? Like, there's not really a lot of like little bits of information that you get. It is a very good game. It's a fantastic looking game, even on the Xbox, and I really like it. But it's just kind of like, I don't know how it does. But I stopped playing that recently because I was too busy. I had to make games for my uni course and stuff, and play little indie games and stuff.
We got the inside story. Amy's a developer.
Well, not I haven't developed a game yet, but I will in about 5 weeks' time.
Nice.
But
There
yeah,
you
like
go.
the indie games
What's
I kind
this?
of play were kind of cool.
Very good. Yeah, and I know you're. It's interesting because that's kind of how I felt with the old Thieves. Thieves as well. Although I was like 9, so it's possible the games just felt slow and not very well directed because they were super hard when you're 9.
See, the thing
I
is,
don't
I
understand
didn't even know there was another Thief. I'm one of those horrible people. I had no idea about the other. Like,
God.
there was another game called Thief.
So what? Yeah,
basically.
while all the old gamers are like, why are all the new reboots just called the same thing as the first game? People like you are like, oh, this is completely new franchise. It's good.
Yeah, that's literally
Yeah,
what it's like.
That's the strange thing about Fallout 3. Bethesda released it as Fallout 3 rather than Fallout, and to be honest, how many people were they expecting to play it based on? Oh yes, this is the same series as the first 2 Fallouts.
Yeah, it's one of the games where that strategy of just calling it Fallout again would have actually maybe made sense.
The old die-hard Fallout fans, because there's always that as soon as
there were
you
quite a few.
modernize.
Oh, yeah, no, like I understand that, and by calling it Fallout 3, new players such as myself would have thought, oh well, I better learn about the other Fallouts and see what their deal was. As soon as I saw how ancient they looked and just what they were like, I was like, oh god, I'm not playing these.
There's only
And
so many
how they
hours
were
today.
just like inherently different as far as games goes. I mean, they're like what
Yeah,
2-dimensional role playing games. It was
Yeah,
Isometric,
isometric. Basically, yeah, they're isometric turn-based things. I think.
Apparently,
Yeah.
they are really, really, really solid games for their time and of the type of RPG that they were doing. However, I have to say that apparently, yeah, it's one of those situations where branding it as Fallout 3 might not have been any necessary because they're very fundamentally different games, and it didn't stop all of the old die-hard Fallout 1 and 2 fans from raging that it wasn't a copy of Fallout 1 and 2 and was
There'll
now
always be those.
different.
Yeah, but that's the thing. You can't always just keep a game the same for its older. Like, you have to take advantage of the changing tastes. You know.
Well, I was going to say, I was going to agree with Henry's point of, why? I mean, in that case, why did they choose to call it Fallout at all? I mean, as Henry says, it was completely different to
because
the original style.
it was
set in a completely different it was set in a completely different location, and on top of that, Fallout itself was actually based on another post-apocalyptic wasteland game called Wasteland, I think.
Which
I mean, they could just have made another spiritual succession sort of manner of Bioshock System Shock.
Yeah, they changed it mechanically, but they obviously wanted to keep it within the same universe and the same theme, so that's why it's Fallout.
They were scooping the nostalgia, which is the
I mean,
only
they
reason
wanted to
anyone
keep
bought
the
them.
Brotherhood of Steel. They wanted to keep the Enclave. They wanted to keep super mutants and things like that. I mean,
Can I just clarify? Did Bethesda buy Fallout over from different developers from the first 2 games?
Yeah, actually,
yeah,
do you want me to run through that? Because I'm pretty sure that the original release, I'm not 100%, but I'm pretty sure the original release of Fallout was done by a company called Obsidian Entertainment. Or the guys, the bulk of the guys who make up Obsidian Entertainment anyway. And interestingly enough, they've always kept together, and they actually worked a lot on New Vegas, I think.
Yeah, they developed it, didn't they?
Where else have we heard that name, Obsidian Development? I've heard that name.
Obsidian Entertainment has also worked, I think, heavily on Knights of the Old Republic 2, which, while unfinished for what it was, is a very strong game. So I think, especially because I have very high opinion of New Vegas, I think it's a very solid development team for the RPG genre.
Anyway,
New Vegas interesting in that the game itself was fantastic, but I think DLC was awful, like beyond reckoning awful. As in, like, Henry, do you remember Honest Hearts?
I remember it. I don't remember what it was about.
Do you
Oh,
remember how
Honest
Honest
Hearts?
Hearts was? Let's take this game set in a post-apocalyptic desert, and let's take our player who's paid £15 for this alternative, different desert, and let's make them fight tribesmen who aren't wearing any clothes yet are inexplicably really tough, and let's get this really important character who was referenced all the time in the original game and was built up to be so cool and so interesting, and all he does is sit at a table with unique pistol loading animation, which even then is not that fantastic because the 2 piles of pistols he has on his table stay the same, and it was just I can't believe I paid money for
Oh yeah,
this.
what
no
Honest
need to
Hearts
be
did
upset,
to
Adam.
the
No need to be upset. No need to be upset.
what Honest Hearts did to the Burned Man legend was terrible. I mean, they could have made it so much better, but instead they just slapped it in the face and said, like, no, you're just going to be just done really poorly.
Yeah.
There's going to be no resolution of anything in it. It's just going to be
It's
Like compare Honest Hearts to the Dead Money Sierra Madre DLC. It was fantastic, and did the same team make those DLCs?
I think sometimes there's a difference between the writers and the execution, but the thing about it was Honest Hearts was just bad because it was neither well written nor well executed.
Yeah, I haven't heard anything.
By
good
the
from it.
way, Obsidian Entertainment is probably you heard about it because they made South Park.
oh,
Yeah, South Park's The Stick of
holy
Truth,
shit. Well,
2014.
they're doing well with that.
Was I right about their previous?
Star Wars,
Yeah,
Knights of the Old Republic 2,
yeah.
The Sith Lords, 2004, yeah.
From what I've heard,
Neverwinter Nights, Alpha Protocol, Fallout New Vegas, Dungeon Siege 3, and the new one coming out in September called Pillars of Eternity, which is only for PC and Linux and Mac.
Weird.
Oh,
From what I've heard, the new South Park game is really, really good, but only if you actually watch South Park.
That's what I've been.
Because
I mean,
it is
that's the game, that isn't it? You know, I mean, it would be a bit weird if it was.
well, if it did become like a new classic video game for people who hadn't played South Park, it would be really unexpected and interesting. But
Pretty
that's
weird, yeah.
unlikely.
Anyway, so, Amy, you done anything else recently?
As I played like little indie games, like Thomas Was Alone, which is basically you're like a rectangle
Oh,
and
holy
you move
shit.
along using the arrow keys and stuff, and there's like it's kind of like the Stanley Parable. There's an narrator and he talks and he's just like Stanley was alone, or not Stanley was alone. Thomas was alone, and you're talking about, and he didn't like being alone. He was lonely, but he could jump, and then you're able to jump and all, and then you find a little square which you can then take control of to go into smaller spaces on the level and things. So I played that, and then I played like Super Columbine RPG, which was an experience, to
Yes,
say the least.
I'd say it would be.
Yes, it was. But yeah, apart from that, no, I've been reading The Hunger Games again, and
I will read them one day. I swear to God, I've got them on my Kindle for like 2 months.
yeah, I bought mine like
Battle
immediately after the
Royale.
second film.
I'll read it
Battle
too.
Royale.
Anyway, yes.
Oh yeah. The Hunger Games is just battle royale for squishy American teenagers.
Battle Royale is terrible.
Oh, the
film
film's
is
terrible,
terrible.
Amy. The film is terrible.
I also forgot to introduce myself. I'm Martian.
Oh, that's right. I forgot. You're here.
Martian as the identityless narrator. He felt like a force of nature.
Ooh, well,
We've
that's
already
sexy
referred
and
to
weird.
him multiple times. I mean,
That only deepens the mystery, though.
sometimes
Mystery of
the
what?
red.
The mystery of Martian,
Apparently.
an erotic
Or-
thriller.
Anyway,
We're getting pretty meta
What have
already.
you been up to?
what I've been up to is I've been playing Warhammer 40k Space Marine. And it has been one of two things this week that have been incredibly pleasant surprises. Because I also watched Elysium, right? Which everyone was like, it's okay. It's fine. It's an okay movie. And I watched it and I was like, this is brilliant! This is blowing my socks off. Because it's fucking just Neil Blomkamp again. It's just all the stuff that made
Yeah.
District 9 great. You know, mad, scary
But-
South Africans.
Yes.
No offense, André. Even though
Is-
you're the
Oh,
scariest. South
Is Elysium literally just the 1%'s bad? The movie.
Oh yeah, no, I mean it's total sort of like bizarrely Marxist Americana. That thing they do where they don't understand anything. But if you can, yeah, because I mean, fundamentally, it also manages to be more complex than that, and
Mhm.
it does that thing that I like. You know what I'm like? I've got a huge boner for verisimilitude, stuff that feels as though it could maybe be real, and feels as though they've done it the way it would actually happen. Just I fucking love it. Because yeah, no, it's actually well done, and they have a protagonist who isn't just a brainless slab of meat. He actually, I mean, he's nearly just a brainless slab of meat. I'm not saying it was amazing. I'm just saying I heard it was really mediocre, but I actually really enjoyed it, especially the bad guy. As I said, scary South
Yeah.
Africans make everything better.
Hell yeah.
I loved
You,
it.
you are our resident scary South African. Have you seen Elysium?
Yeah.
I actually have not.
Should
I'm
watch it.
saving
Just-
it to watch with a friend, but
Yeah,
unfortunately,
just to
I do
see
not
your
have any
glorious
friends.
Boer countrymen at their finest. So I was really pleased with Elysium.
Because I
Awesome.
also believe the main guy who played in the District 9, I
Yes.
think Peter Potgieter was his name
Yes.
in the movie itself. He's playing in Elysium.
Well,
He's
I,
like one
I
of the
thought
main-
that was him.
Yeah, that's
Yes,
one of the main.
yes.
The guy that has boss fight.
It was
Yeah.
not him. I thought that was him, but I thought no, that couldn't possibly be him.
Yeah, no,
he
it
must
is,
be a great
yeah.
actor because he
He's
goes from
fantastic.
being a fucking like snivelly little dweeb in District 9 to being the scariest motherfucker I've ever seen in Elysium.
It's
Yeah.
really good. That guy is amazing. I mean, they uncovered obviously his true potential at District 9 because he was just like a normal South African actor, really. Because it's they needed to take a South African actor because the accent is so difficult to make.
Yeah, yeah.
So-
We've tried. We can't. We just do this instead. We can't mock him. It's terrible.
Wait.
But yeah, so I was really pleasantly surprised by Elysium. I was also really pleasantly surprised by Warhammer 40k because again, everyone said it's okay.
Yeah.
But I haven't played it. I was like, oh, holy shit! Chain swords and bolters and all the fantastic Warhammer 40k gory insanity. And it was just done so respectfully, and it was. I think I enjoyed it really because I played it on hard from the beginning because I sensed it was a game that the challenge was going to make it better, and it definitely did. And so I heartily recommend that game because a lot of people are just like, it's okay, but it's not. It's not okay. It's really good. It's fantastic, and
Martian, to what extent would you say you're familiar with the 40k universe?
not nearly as much of most of you dorks, but more than the person in the street.
More
I
than
see.
I played
Yeah,
Dawn of War.
I think you
and
know
that's it.
what Warhammer 40k is.
Oh yeah, but I understand the atmosphere. I understand what they're going for. I understand the sort of oppressive, intense, manic
Well, that's
thing.
what I didn't like in Space Marine. Whenever there's a bit where one of the guys with you says that is not an action accounted for in the Codex Astartes.
Yeah, yeah.
And then the guy turns to him, the captain, and he says, "You should not always blindly follow the Codex." And it's like,
Are they
I know what they're-
Ultramarines?
They are all.
yeah, they're Ultramarines. And I'm like,
Oh,
Yeah,
that's
they're
heretic.
not really-
they were
Yeah.
the guys
Heretic!
that came up with the Codex Astartes.
Well, you know what? You know what? It
Robert
would be
Gilliman
spoilers.
made it.
It would be spoilers for me to say what I want to say about that. All I say
Yeah,
is play
no
the
one
game.
cares.
The game has been out for a long time. Okay, spoilers for the next couple of minutes. He doesn't keep getting away with that. He doesn't.
Did they kill
Right?
him?
He is well, not quite, but yeah, without wanting to reveal too much, he
Reveal
does.
too much.
Balls to chaos.
Huh?
Balls to
I'm not.
chaos.
Never mind. But you're saying the Ultramarines. What were you saying about them, Adam?
The Ultramarines,
like the
their Primarch, Robert Gilliman, wrote the Codex Astartes after the Horus Heresy. He came up with the Codex Astartes. There was almost another civil war about whether or not to adopt the Codex Astartes. For an Ultramarine captain to say you should not always blindly follow the Codex Astartes, I know what they're trying to do. They're trying to give him some characterization and not make him just, I am a soldier, fight. Like, that's what Ultramarines are. They are, the Codex Astartes says we should do this, so we will bloody do it.
Yeah, and that was
I mean,
what
like,
that was
James
my
is right because like the Ultramarines wouldn't deploy if their numbers weren't divisible by 10. That's how ridiculous they are.
No, there's only 3 of you in the game. Oh god, it's such heresy.
I know, right?
Anyway,
They had to-
apart
they had
from
to
all
Well,
that-
cut
That's it.
themselves
Hey,
into
Martian, it's
thirds.
a really good game, but
Oh, yeah, it's very-
I just found that bit quite jarring. It's like, no, you're an Ultramarine. You
Well,
would
I would-
only go by
I
the
would
Codex.
urge you to finish it because they do.
I
address
have finished it. I know what happens. I just
Alright.
thought that problem existed.
That's all.
Sorry. I just thought that existing at all as a thing that he does was just not what an Ultramarine captain would do.
Perhaps a bit contrived.
I understand why they did it in the first place.
To be honest, I always think that every game or piece of literature or any form of medium that approaches Space Marines and doesn't leave them as these mysterious figures with very little information on them as individual people, is something that does it wrong, because the more you know about them and the more they characterize them, the more they polish off all of the sheen and coolness of Space Marines for me.
Yeah, that's why like the Grey Knights are without doubt one of the coolest chapters of Space Marines.
Let's not get into a shit
like,
fight about which
problem
Space
I
Marine
had
chapter
was,
is cool.
like, whenever the Dawn of War, the first generation of Dawn of War games came out, they added the Grey Knights in Winter Assault, and
Yeah.
that was just dumb because
Yeah.
Winter Assault is about fighting orcs and chaos. So yes,
I agree.
but the Grey Knights are the Chamber Militant of the Ordo Hereticus, or the Ordo Malleus, is it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, the Ordo Malleus.
Nerds.
Like
Well,
the idea
in
that you
all
can just
honesty-
recruit a squad of Grey Knights and then this fight,
Yeah, they did rectify it later on.
orcs is just
when
a
they,
bit. Eh.
Yeah, no,
they
they
were-
rectified
They
it
were
later on,
shoehorning
James.
in the Grey Knights on account of their popularity, and it was a bit dumb. Like Grey Knights are really cool and they're really fun to use in the game, but thematically it was a poor choice to add them.
Yeah, but don't worry, because
Henry's
they changed
right.
it later on, James. They added the, put the Grey Knight unit with the Sisters of Battle in one of the
Yes,
expansions.
But even then,
That
the
was a
Sisters
lot
of Battle
better.
are the Chamber Malleus, the Chamber
It's
Militant
true,
of
it's
the Ordo
true, but I think-
Hereticus. Whenever they try to approach Space Marines as anything other than Ultra Warriors that the layman does not know about, because I think I'm going by the 40k wiki on this. I haven't read very many 40k novels, but I think the wiki says that like the majority of the trillions of citizens of the Imperium don't know chaos is a thing.
What?
They're not going to know
Yeah.
that Space Marines are really a thing.
I don't know anything about this universe.
They're not
No,
going to know
like,
anything.
no, they are aware of Space Marines. Like most,
Yeah,
citizens-
Space
most
Marines are
citizens
synced up as,
know
like-
the history of the Horus Heresy. Most of them know, like
Fair
the Space
enough.
Marines are the guardian angels of the Emperor. But like most citizens will never have actually seen a Space Marine
I mean,
because there only are about
no
a million of them.
like no one in the Imperium who isn't, at least a planetary governor in a particularly susceptible system would know that Grey Knights are even a thing.
Yeah.
Like the Grey Knights are meant to be secret. So the idea of just like dropping them in and recruiting them for 100 requisition points and 5 unit caps in Dawn
This-
of War is just ugh.
The other thing I wanted to talk about that I did, it wasn't this week, it was a couple of weeks ago, but I also played some Banished. And Banished, I thought was going to be a city builder game. I bought into it all optimistic, like, oh, I'm going to build a little ideal village. I'm going to have a nice, fun time with the fishing and everything being okay. But it's not. It's a sneaky cautionary tale about communism. There's a hidden barb in it because you can build a market, right? Okay, that sounds okay, doesn't it? Marketplace, everyone buying, selling, owning your own goods, freedom, all this stuff that we like. But the market isn't a market, and to call it a market is sick. I built it, and I was trying to figure out what it was doing. It was definitely making things run better. And you have to make people work for it who are vendors. And they do something nebulous. I was like, what does it do? It says vendors will distribute food. What does that mean? What does it mean? So I ended up looking it up. What it does, it prevents hoarding. Okay? It's not a market. It's a redistribution facility. The vendors aren't... Yeah, it's the opposite of a market.
Yeah,
The vendors
it's
aren't
from
merchants.
each according to his ability to everyone according to his needs.
The vendors
That's
aren't,
what it is.
The vendors aren't vendors. They're state economic enforcers who go into your house and see if you've got too many radishes, and if you do, they take them away and give them to
So
someone else.
they're the Ministry of Internal Affairs,
It's the
the
ministry.
NKVD.
Oh god, it's fucking sick, and I was horrified and continued to play anyway because I don't care.
Martian,
yeah,
is there an end game to Banished or?
yes, you eventually build a church and everyone starves to death.
Okay.
It's very sneaky.
Oh, GG.
Like it's not so much as it is like a town simulator as it just is just a survival game.
Exactly, but it wouldn't be a survival game if you can actually establish some sort of sustainable market culture. Everyone dies, and you have to constantly keep it running because it's a communist authoritarian, commune village.
I was almost going to say, but isn't that a point? Because the point in the game is not about communist authoritarian villages. It's about you can't build a perfect utopia.
Yeah, but this is the thing.
It's
You
more
can't
about
even build a remotely sustainable society. There's a
yeah, but
difference.
that's the point of the game. Yeah, it's meant to be
Well, that's a bit
impossible
more
to
depressing.
really
Just
survive.
because I think this is a very common feature. Just because something is the point doesn't necessarily mean the point is a good one.
Yeah.
I know, but but apparently, like the mechanics of the game make it actually impossible, barring some ridiculous, amazing application of skill or understanding of how the game works, to make a sustainable and
maybe eventually.
happy place to live
Maybe.
indefinitely.
Well, to be fair, that is a translation that, like, Martian, in Banished, how long do people live for in it? Like, if they have enough food, how long is their natural lifespan in terms of,
they will
like,
turn
is it an
10.
hour? Is it half an hour? You know, that in like real.
It's that's hard to say actually. It's a lot. It's a reasonably long time. I remember I've played it for 15 or 16 hours over 3 different villages, and my most successful village must have been about 8 of those, 8 or 9 hours, and I've had, I want to say 3 generations born.
Right, so you can say roughly about 2-3 hours for a life.
Yes.
Yeah. So you're putting you have a translation from real world times of 70 years into a matter of hours. Like mechanically, you have to add all these dynamic events to actually make that translate properly and have all these problems. So there being a mechanical problem with making a functioning society is because you're trying to get a concept that has taken centuries and try and put it into a few hours. You need this completely artificial addition of difficulty.
Yeah, it's
It
a
seems
fundamental.
like an awful lot of effort for possibly not a very good game.
It's okay. It's okay.
Like,
you have to be the kind of mad person like me that likes to manage things to enjoy it. But there's enough people out there apparently with that particular severe personality disorder.
That said, I'm not a fan of artificial difficulty. Like the reason I don't like Dark Souls as a game is just because it makes certain things needlessly difficult.
Oh, let's not get into that. Jesus Christ.
Martian,
Oh,
are you getting
casual
Dark
game.
Souls 2?
I'm going to get it when it's not.
Sorry, James. Just like to add to that, I think it's a fantastic idea for Dark Souls to be needlessly difficult because there are very few needlessly difficult games out there, and for that very
Well,
reason, I believe
to be
it's so
needlessly
popular.
difficult games. But my point is, Dre, it's one thing to have a game that relies on your skill as a player. That's fine. Making dragon. If you fight dragons in Dark Souls and stuff like that, making the dragons difficult to fight because they use all these different abilities and skills is different from giving them so much health that the time it takes for you to do it, you're going to slip up a few times and die. It's things like that where things are needlessly strong.
Yeah, I see what you're talking
Things are
about.
needlessly convoluted.
But I still think it is fantastic. I mean, it's not for us, no, but I honestly think there was a massive market gap.
No,
where you
I'm
need, like,
perfectly
this.
happy for it to exist as a game that fills a niche that people will play. It's been hugely successful. Obviously, it works well. It's just not my kind of game.
Yes,
I
I
guess-
agree. It's
I
not
guess you
mine
can say
either.
I'm a filthy casual.
I will.
Dark
you
Souls
are,
is
Jay.
the definition of a game that isn't for everyone. I personally, I still haven't fucking finished it. I'm going to. I swear to God.
Remember I tried
Someday
to play
you'll
it?
get out of Undead Burg or Undead Parish.
I did. Amy.
Remember I tried to play it a wee bit, Martian, and just like rage quit within like 5 seconds?
Oh yeah, no, you could. You would never.
I mean,
It was
that's
literally the
because
start of it where there was a troll, and I was like, I have no idea what to do here.
It's
Amy,
the
Amy is
silent
the
people.
quintessential game 3R girl.
Spelling gamer
Don't-
with a 3.
Don't ever say that again.
Oh, it's okay, anyway, enough unbelievable horseshit. Let's get on to our first topic on RN.
If you hear any sort of random noises, that would probably be my cats climbing up the curtains, as one is doing right now.
That's
Or-
fine.
Are any of
or
our,
banging
is, it,
things.
is anyone else in here familiar with Dodger? I think like Martian, you know who Dodger is. You can see
Oh,
what I
yes.
meant by.
And we've got one. That means we're winning. Okay, anyway. Our topic is what the fuck happened to RTS games?
Oh, finally, we're onto this topic.
Yeah, what the fuck happened to RTS games?
Okay.
Henry, what the fuck happened to RTS games?
Well, what happened on RTS games is sort of okay. I think I should establish a base point, what I think happened, and where we are now. So there was a base point where typically in PC gaming, RTSs were one of the biggest genres around. You had big names and sort of a lot of releases that came out for RTSs. What happened to RTSs is they very quickly reached the limit of what they could actually do with gameplay. So companies decided that everyone hated base building in RTSs. I think some games should have moved away from base building, but the decision that everyone hated it when it was the cornerstone of the genre created a weird series of games where there was little to no base building, probably ending in Command and Conquer 4, which was a huge flop.
Oh, do not speak its name.
And then, since
I
then, really, there
it's
haven't been
shite.
that many big RTS games. StarCraft 2 is probably the biggest, but also in many ways a nail in the coffin to the RTS genre, because it's so popular that it's destroyed other RTSs.
Yeah.
And if you don't like it, well then you're kind of out of
Go to
luck.
Russia.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, Andre, what do you think? You were going to say something there?
No, the thing about RTS games are, it's a dying market. Back in the 90s, RTS games used to be the big thing. I mean, Warcraft 2, StarCraft 1, all these different
All the fucking Command and Conquers.
mythology even. That was in the early 2000s, wasn't it? And of
You
course,
should also point out how like StarCraft 1 was a huge jump from what the typical RTS was like.
Yes, exactly.
I mean,
Just
the
the main-
Warcraft, Orcs and Elves, Warcraft 2, whatever, Warcraft 3, all these ones were basically based on a rock paper scissors system of this unit kills that unit, which is killed
Adam,
by
you're
that
getting some
unit,
horrible
which is
feedback
good
from
against
you
that
there.
unit.
yeah,
Sorry.
Whereas StarCraft, every unit could take on any other unit in any particular aspect.
exactly.
You just
Now
needed
that-
like StarCraft was an anomaly, I would
it
say,
put
about
the
RTSs in the 90s.
It's true, but it put the strategy in the word RTS. It
It was one of the best examples of what an RTS
Yes. Now
was
the thing
and
is
could be.
that because of that one anomaly, all the RTS games started to follow StarCraft 2. No longer did you build these big buildings, spend like, I don't know, 30 minutes, 40 minutes building your big base and going in with a big army. It all became a lot more fast-paced, the RTS genre. And the problem was, in my opinion, the games try to follow StarCraft, and Warcraft, essentially. They're both very similar. Very closely. Like, you build your buildings, you need, just quickly build your buildings, get into combat as soon as possible with different strategies. 15 minutes later, the victory is assured, and that's game over,
I agree. It was that weird pro-StarCraft thing of people just getting it down to this mathematical perfection
Exactly.
that raised the bar of what was expected of you and completely
Yes.
changed the dynamic of the game into something I didn't even recognize
And
anymore.
that was the beginning of the end for the RTS genre. That I believe.
I mean,
because-
I remember,
Are you arguing that being able to? Sorry, go on, Henry.
Sorry, I'm just thinking it's like there's different types of video gamers, and I remember when I was young, I played a lot of real-time strategy games, and I still play, I guess, to a degree, real-time strategy games. I don't really enjoy a lot of the new releases that much, but I mean, what I enjoyed wasn't necessarily hotkeys and being the fastest and the best player. I just enjoyed the process of playing the game and building bases and expanding across the map. And there were customized difficulty settings where, you would get attacked relentlessly, so you couldn't just do that, or, anything sort of along those lines that would allow you to play the game at the level you wanted to. And online components weren't really such a big feature. But then, when games started to become such big budget things, they had to push the online component. And the only way to push the online component was essentially what StarCraft did, where it was, oh yeah, play StarCraft, get obscenely good just to be in bronze anyway.
Yes.
Oh god, yeah.
And it kind of stopped being fun and started being this huge contest.
Yeah.
It's not this casual fun game you play with your friends. You can still do that, but now the fact, especially with StarCraft 2, where you have to be online. No, you can't use the same copy for a LAN party like you used to with other RTS games back in the past.
Yeah,
You have to each have your own copy.
I think that's a problem with the ranking system that StarCraft uses.
Yes.
It encouraged this, you have to be the best, you have to be better,
Yes.
there's no room to experiment. Games like first-person shooters like Battlefield have unranked and ranked, and that encourages a sort of unranked games where you go in and you piss about and you attach C4 to helicopters and try to fly them into planes and stuff like that. There isn't that equivalent in StarCraft. You have to play ranked, you have to be better and rank up.
Now-
There is no Babby Kids casual room for unskilled noobs.
Well, there
Yeah,
are the custom
Hashtag
game
no
lobbies.
name.
It's
There are
very
the custom
true.
game lobbies, but there's no actual official
That's exactly it.
unranked
So
queue.
actually, I believe with the expansion, though, correct me if I'm wrong, Heart of the Swarm,
Oh.
they changed it so that you can have a casual game mode, I believe, where it's not ranked, where it doesn't count.
Oh, well,
I think
that's
so,
good.
It's a good
But the damage
change
has
they've made.
The damage has been done for StarCraft 2.
It has, yes, it has already been done.
Like, I'm
But
playing it
I'm
for the
glad to
single player.
see that they have noticed that, oh yeah, this is a problem that they're having, but it's too late. The game itself, you can't even, it's a strict competitive, no time to have fun. It's like, dare I say, League of Legends.
Oh,
Very similar.
that's a whole other thing.
No,
yeah,
it's
it's
no,
interesting.
because League of Legends has never made any pretense about being anything other than a multiplayer intense.
Oh yes, no, I agree there. No, I don't mean in that sense.
Yeah.
I just mean in the sense that it is a very competitive game.
Yeah, which is interesting because that's like it's almost exactly it's almost similar to the thing, and I don't want to spoil this because this is another topic we have planned, but it's almost similar to what's happened to FPSs, where multiplayer blew up so suddenly and so lucratively that it just evaporated the prioritization of single player components in these games. Like
Which is kind of annoying for people who, like me, don't ever play multiplayer. 'Cause I don't like people.
exactly. People are using
So-
it, and it's especially bad in RTSs. Like I really liked StarCraft 2's campaign, and I loved the Heart of the Swarm campaign. What else is out there for somebody who wants to play a single player RTS?
Yes.
To be
Well,
honest,
it's nothing!
well, the thing
There is
the thing
nothing.
about RTSs is whenever I went back, because I recently got some of the old Command and Conquer games because they're some of my favorites, and
Thanks to
sat and
me.
played Command and Conquer Red Alert 2, and it was fantastic. And I thought with some minor UI upgrades, it would stand up now. Like quite literally,
Yeah.
the faults aren't really with any of the game design things. I thought it has actually some really good elements with how you control your things. You don't have to be a wizard to play it because
Yeah.
you just click on things on the side of the screen if you need to build them instead of having to click a million
Oh god,
hotkeys
yeah, Jesus
that
Christ.
aren't
Yeah.
anything other than a pointless skill inflator
Yeah.
Yes.
that make the game harder to play but don't actually give you any benefit for playing it. Command and
Yes.
Conquer kept this really simple, tight control scheme, and there are some things that could be upgraded along with a lot of the hotkey features would actually be quite nice to control your units and things, while you could always just macro by clicking things in the sidebar, and it would actually be a really fluid, tight experience. And that's my answer to what to do with RTSs, because
Well-
whenever I think back and go to what I want to play, I think back to a lot of the old ones.
Yeah.
Well, Henry, you mentioned some RTSs should move away from base building, and to be honest, I think StarCraft was one that should have. Well, I mean, the deal with StarCraft was that it was only ever a base builder. But thematically, it was just weird that the Protoss, Imperial Armada, and Juggernaut have moved into the sector to cleanse the life of Zerg, so they have to send down 5 probes and build their base.
Yes, it was particularly silly in StarCraft. The obsession with
one
that
game that
same
moved away from base building, and it surprised me and made me dislike it because I don't like change, but whenever I stuck with it, I realized that it was good, was Dawn of War 2.
I knew
Yes.
that. Yeah.
Yes,
Not
yes,
building
yes.
bases in Dawn of War was a phenomenal addition because it was a case of call down your marines and mow them down.
Which makes
Don't
sense
worry
because-
about having not enough energy to power your refinery to get space
Yeah.
dust.
Yeah, that's
It was just make sure, like, obviously they have to add in things like requisition points simply so you just don't call down 90 squads of tactical marines and mow everything down.
Of course, yeah. I
That said, there shouldn't be a unit cap on the game. The unit caps are just dumb.
No.
Unit
I believe there
caps
should be
are
unit cap.
artificial balancing.
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
Because believe me
Yeah.
when I say this, imagine your Zerg in StarCraft or Tyranids for Dawn of War 2. If there's
I
no
have a
unit cap,
perfect
it
example
will
of
be
this as
underpowered.
well.
Because you get more
Um,
Tyranids.
That said, Henry, you could have as Henry and Dre. That said, you could have as many Tyranids as you want, but that number of Bane Blades, no contest.
Oh,
Well, it's a resource thing. But I remember this is my legendary tactic for Halo Wars. The 100% win ratio grunt rush strategy,
yeah.
where we played 3v3s together, my friends and I, And our strategy was you could teleport units to your leader unit, which you got for free at the start of the game. And then you just built grunts. And you didn't stop. And you built them at a constant rate, constantly teleporting into your leader. And you ganged up on one player, then you moved on to the next, and you moved on to the next. And the strategy was so strong because the grunts were building at a faster rate than they were dying. And the only possible way to stop them was to build dedicated anti-infantry units. But even if you did that, if there was no pop cap to the grunts, there's just no way they could have ever killed them all with the time that they had to build an army.
A
it
base
was
building
horrible
RTS, a base building RTS that had a phenomenal balance between resource difficulty, balancing, micromanagement, planning everything was Cossacks.
Oh god, yes.
Cossacks had no unit cap.
Yeah, very.
You
I
never
think it didn't technically have a unit cap, but it was just so high you were never going to.
No, it didn't technically. It did technically have a unit cap, but you would never reach it because everything died so quickly.
Incredible.
It had no real limit on resources. The only thing that
You just kept upgrading your mines.
you kept upgrading mines, putting more peasants into them. You kept putting more peasants to do mine and forest. Food was the only thing that was actually had any sort of a cap because you had to constantly regrow fields.
Yeah, exactly.
Cossacks, you would just churn out units, pikemen and musketmen, and you would just churn these out constantly and constantly.
And you literally needed
And
a
if you ran
constant
out
stream
of
fresh
gold,
peasants.
like if you ran out of gold, your navy would mutiny and things like that. Like it had its own balancing for running out of resources.
No, it was
Like,
fantastic.
Cossacks had a wonderful balance of all these things, and to be honest, that's a game that if you want an RTS, you should go and play. If you
Oh, you
haven't played
definitely
it, you should
should.
just
No,
go
Cossacks
play
massive.
Cossacks.
Cossacks fantastic. Like just the fact that you have to, like, if you want to really win, you want to do really well, it's viable. In fact, it's necessary to have 3 town halls permanently, constantly, infinitely producing peasants, and just siphoning them into all of your resource production. That's how you win at Cossacks. You just have to keep shoveling more peasants into the furnace. It's amazing.
I think talking about base building's a sort of fundamental part of the RTS genre, and the move away from it, I think, was one of at least the first really popular game, from what I know, to do it was Company of Heroes. And obviously it's THQ, so it's the same Dawn of
Rest in
War
peace.
people.
Yep.
Who ran out of money.
Their
Rest in,
souls.
rest in peace, THQ.
Yeah.
Rip
You
in
released
peace.
you released Company of Heroes 2, which was the same
Thank
game
you,
as
too
Company of
soon.
Heroes 1 with no meaningful improvements. But thank you anyway. Oh man, those graphical upgrades really help in the RTS genre.
Just a quick point about Company of Heroes was a World War II game should not have had a unit cap. Like only being able to build 2 tanks.
Oh no, but that was
Yeah.
part of it. That was part of how the strategy.
I think really
That did
it was
actually happen in World War II, though, didn't they? They did only use 2 tanks.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Not
that's the thing.
entirely
There's
sure.
a mathematical problem the British ran into in estimating the number of Tiger tanks, and they found that theoretically, the Germans should be producing a couple of thousand. They had actually only managed to produce 2 Tiger tanks, and they both got stuck in mud in Russia and died.
Right.
So
That
GG.
sort of sounds as though it's almost like a sort of vaguely satirical version of a real thing.
No,
It's
in World War
not.
II
It's just
as an
nonsense.
aside, in World War II, the British did actually very accurately estimate the number of Tiger tanks Germany produced, and it's a very important statistical model. But that's very boring. So let's move on.
Yes.
Anyway, as I was saying, so Company of Heroes was one of the first games that moved away from base building, but it still had what I think is very interesting is minimalistic base building, and the resource gathering was capturing points on the map. So really the focus wasn't on huge amounts of base building. You only really had a couple of buildings, but you could build emplacements, but they were really important and cool structures that you could throw up anywhere on the field. And I think the pop cap was introduced essentially to stop overmassing an army and then swarming over someone, and to promote dynamic gameplay where you were constantly assaulting multiple points in the battlefield. I think it's all in all a really solid game, but I think it was a weird choice that everyone in all genres decided to. Well, all genres. There weren't even then. The number of RTS games were tapering off a little bit, but really, it was a strange move, especially for franchises like Command and Conquer, to move away from base building
Very strange.
or to concentrate, at least in the case of Red Alert 3, on huge gimmicks such as base building in water, that featureless expanse of terrain with no
Anything.
no anything in it. It's just empty water. And really, there was sort of a series of kind of bad attempts in RTSs to innovate that were kind of pointless, because an RTS really doesn't need to innovate all that much. It just needs to be a really solid game of its own accord with interesting units and good mechanics. And I think, interestingly enough, an important balance between macroing and microing, which, say, StarCraft has an awful lot of micromanagement of every individual thing to be at the best tier,
Yeah.
whereas I believe a more successful model, perhaps, or better to play at least, would be to have very simplified macro options so that you can concentrate on microing your units and fighting battles quite simply, because that's why you're playing the game.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, it's weird the amount of ridiculous sort of constant busy work you have to do to be good at StarCraft 2. And I mean, I don't know. The main thing I always played RTSs for, and perhaps this is just me, but I didn't even necessarily play them for the gameplay. If that's weird, I don't know. It was so long ago that there were RTSs in the world. But I played them just because it was so cool. I loved building a giant base and building a giant army and just marveling at how cool it was. And then everything would blow up and it was awesome. And I just enjoyed looking at it and hearing it and the atmosphere and the excitement and the sort of almost emergent storytelling that every crazy skirmish match against 6 hard AIs could eventually become. And it's just all gone. What can you do that in? That's recent.
Well,
I mean, I really enjoy
that.
Can I bring up something?
Yeah.
Can I bring up something at that point?
No.
Okay. But yeah, I think, I mean, in our current culture of just endlessly recycling IP, I would suspect that we will probably see a return to that. And in fact, I'd say we already kind of have, because we came out, I think probably 2 years ago now, maybe one, was that HD re-release of Age of Empires 2.
Oh, yeah.
That actually did well enough to merit its own strange little expansion pack. And obviously that was something that they released for very little money. I mean, it was like a bad
I mean, no,
port,
it doesn't count.
But I mean, it's still enough to get an expansion. I think it's true that there was still that.
Will it prove
that
to someone
market.
that it's worth? Yeah, maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Although even then, as we were talking about earlier, that RTSs did have that move towards incredibly fast online play, and Age of Empires 2, it was very much aimed at its online component.
Oh yeah, it's bizarre.
Yeah, and people still play it. People got really, really into it in like crazy ways. People like it was even madder than StarCraft, because there weren't just 2 resources. So we had all these charts and things out on all these charts and things, and like when you had to start harvesting boars and which wood was the best, and like the meaningless, baffling distinctions between all the civilizations. It wasn't like the simple. Yeah. So maybe I'm wrong in that. Maybe
That actually brings me
was like a precursor to StarCraft, but
that brings me another point that I'd actually like to make. So, in the eternal quest for perfect balance at competitive level, top tier, a lot of RTS games have completely eliminated a lot of the variety and dumb units that you could possibly have. In Age of Empire, imagine if they released StarCraft 2 level of competitive esports, but with Age of Empire 2 races, so that how many of them were there? There were over 20, maybe.
Oh god.
Yeah. And their advantages were all kind of really abstract. They weren't like the hard protests of like our air-based Zerg or Swarmy. It was like
imagine trying to balance things like that. But yeah, in a lot of those RTS games, half of the fun was actually the crazy variety of things that you could do and the amount of units. And I've always wanted. I mean, there's such rigorous balance in games now where they've decided that they need to boil things down to really concise objectives and precise damage charts of how much damage things do. But whereas I've always thought, well, I mean, if there were 20 more units to each faction, I'm not sure if it actually would be more balanced, but some things are balanced by variety, where, I mean, at a professional level, you couldn't possibly have a strategy for everything in mind, because the amount of weird unit compositions and things that your opponent could do would actually be very creative and allow them a lot of opportunities. And I kind of
I've
miss that.
actually heard of this. It's a strategy for balancing things of just supplying so many different possible options. It's something that Magic kind of went for. Although Magic is obviously Magic the Gathering is horrendously imbalanced and broken. But if so many different, I can't remember what the name they gave it was, but if you have so many different parts you can put together in so many different ways, it's impossible to just create the single
Balance
best
through
formula,
diversification or something?
Yeah, something like that.
Well,
I've
yeah,
heard
that might
Balance
be it,
through
but
diversification.
extra credits, I think. Did
There's always, yeah, I think it was an extra credit I got it from. But yeah, you can there'll always be something that can counter it because you can't possibly there are too many different things to be put together.
One strange aspect of that is going back to Planetary Annihilation. Planetary Annihilation is one of the ultimate rock paper scissors games. There is a land unit that is good against naval and air. There's a land unit that's good against land units, and there's a land unit that's good against other things. There's a naval unit good against land and air, an air unit good against land and sea. It's all rock, paper, scissors. But what Planetary Annihilation tries to do is you build so many of every kind of unit that there is no one unit that is good because enough of any other unit will destroy it. So it balances itself. It balances itself by having you produce so many long range fighter bombers that you can't use your anti-air because they're just going to get swarmed. So what you have to do is go for static AA emplacements. But once you've done that, you've got static AA emplacements. Your land units just go in, things like that. I'd like so just point out Planetary Annihilation is actually quite a good base building RTS for balance.
Maybe it's time.
That's what I was saying earlier on, where I said there is only one RTS at the moment that I'm interested in. I don't really know all that much about Planetary Annihilation, aside from the fact that I looked at some of the trailers and they interested me, and I'm currently waiting for an adequate price drop and a sort of improvement in the development stage before I really have a look at it. But
actually, the £70 price tag. What was the justification for that again? It's
lots of early access stuff, and the fact that it's quite a large game. Like you can make your own planetary systems, and you add planets and moons and things of different types, and their orbits and all are different. It's actually quite robust in that.
Yes, but I mean, fuck, it says it's sport. Sporting costs £70. Bizarre. Anyway, hopefully it breathes some life back into the RTS genre. The way it used to be. I mean, I was so desperate for a base building old school RTS. I started playing KKND 2 a couple of months ago. Do you remember that game? Did anyone else in the world play that game?
No.
Yes.
You're the only other person I know of who played KKND.
So you two guys are the losers.
I played it when I was very young, back when I thought that the civilians were a faction.
Oh, those were the days. No, KKND 2 was a fucking clusterfuck. Everything died in 3 hits and moved incredibly quickly, and it was all this bright Technicolor. Nothing made any sense, and I fucking loved it, even though it was awful. But that's how desperate I was.
No, the thing is, RTS games used to be my favorite, like my favorite genre before I went to RPG games. Because in RTS games, they were a bit more like RPG games in a way. It was multi-scale RPG game where you build a massive bases, spend your time homing your buildings or whatever it is. Good single player, fantastic stories in them. I mean, Warcraft 2 wasn't that homey, it was. I don't know if anyone ever played against AI on Warcraft 2. It was the opposite of that. But the single player campaigns and all the campaigns you had especially in the earlier RTSs, even in StarCraft 2 now, except for the fact that you have to be online to play single player, but let's not go into that again. But all of those games were very, they were like playing RPG games. But it's slowly withered away, that aspect. And the fact that no other companies are making RTS games, and they haven't even before StarCraft 2 was released. So that implies to me that, RTS games really don't sell very much, because look at THQ. They're not in business anymore. Yet
THQ was more complicated than that already.
The problem with THQ in many ways was with all of its... Okay, I don't know the exact specifics, but with its last big shot, Company of Heroes 2, it didn't actually produce it it produced another Company of Heroes that could just have been an expansion pack for the first one. It didn't actually add anything mechanically to the game.
But they had run out of money before then, hadn't they?
Oh yes,
Yeah, the
yes,
thing
they
is,
had.
yeah,
They
this
were-
thing-
One
they
of
were-
the real death knell for THQ was Red Faction.
Really? Oh yeah, the
Armageddon.
last one was
Like,
only
it just
Amy
did
played
not
that.
do well.
I was wondering what game I was like. I've played THQ because I remember seeing the symbol. But yeah, Red Faction was brilliant. I love Red Faction. Like Red
The
Faction
very
again
last-
was
it was
nowhere
fun,
near as
but
good
it
as
didn't
Gorilla.
do well.
But yeah, like
When was
Armageddon
this-
was nowhere near as fun as Gorilla, but it's still good. Like
Sadly,
When was Red Faction released? Sorry.
Red Faction or the latest Red Faction
Latest.
Well, the one that you guys are talking about now.
Armageddon.
was out. Oh, that was a few years ago.
Because
It
the
was
thing
like,
is, I've been looking for since my second year of university. That's 3 years ago, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, around there. There were talks about the new Dawn of War 3 that's going to be released and so on. No, so everyone's so excited. Then they said, oh no, it's been. They're not going to release it now because the company are experiencing some financial issues. They're going to go for Company of Heroes instead because they are more certain that they're going to get money out of it. Now, the fact that the latest Company of Heroes, like you just said now, James, failed, even though that was their big thing to do, and not Dawn of War.
It
Sure,
certainly
but yeah.
didn't. It certainly didn't succeed.
It didn't
No,
make the
it
money they
didn't.
needed it to. Yeah. I mean,
Well,
Yeah, that's the thing.
they'd already gone bankrupt by that point, hadn't they? Like they were
Yes,
already.
but
like,
even their ability to, maybe if they'd gone bankrupt and then released the best thing that just sunk everything out of the water, they could have come back or something could have been done. But the problem with Company of Heroes 2 was that, really, it was made, but it's just Company of Heroes. Like, if you reskinned Company of Heroes 1, you'd have a better game, probably. It really, because I was looking forward to it a lot, and it just didn't really bring anything to the table. And whenever I started playing it, I kind of just found it very imbalanced off the bat in a way that was. And I know I was talking about balance not being necessarily the be-all and end-all, but just in a kind of confusing way where some things were just sort of absolutely massacring other units for no real reason. I found that the Germans were just very, very strong and seemed to have superior tech paths. And
Well,
that's what they
Well,
call the
André.
Second World War.
That comes from their RTS simulator.
yeah, the Germans evidently all of the German soldiers individually had been playing RTS simulators, so they knew how to play better.
Truly, they are the masters of Europe.
Anyway, moving swiftly on from
Hail Merkel.
Yeah, I said
Merkel.
what Company of Heroes needs is another expansion pack where they open up the Eastern Front and the Pacific Front, and they bring in the Japanese as a faction and the Red Army as a faction, and give them
Yeah,
really
actually-
interesting. Yeah, and I said this, and then they did half of that and did it badly.
I mean, THQ are an American company, aren't they?
I don't know.
Yes.
I assume
yes.
they are.
Yeah, they are.
I mean, I'm surprised
Also,
it didn't
André,
appeal to the.
Red Faction was out in 2011. Armageddon was out in 2011. They also did Saints Row, which I didn't know.
What?
Saints Row the
Yeah, they
third.
did,
Saints
yeah, that
Row
made a lot
1,
of
2,
money.
and the third.
That's business.
Bad business.
Those
Because
investment.
they released an awful lot of crap at the same time.
Oh.
Yeah, I think it was a
Okay.
desperate attempt. It was like when someone's just about to turn to a corpse, they give their last gasp of breath out. Yeah, I think that was their last gasp. They're trying.
I'll
to
take
get
your word
themselves
for it,
back.
Andre.
One
Yeah.
of the things, Jughead, I think
Wait.
they don't have a Pacific campaign for the Company of Heroes was probably because the Pacific campaign's real hallmark was all the naval battles and things like that, and that wasn't Call of Company of
Yeah, I
Heroes.
mean, that'd
But
be a
that's-
game, but it would have been
still-
harder
you
to
can
sell.
Yeah, like there were big land campaigns. I mean, the American island hopping, Guadalcanal, things like that. The invasion of the preliminary home islands and things like that. Tarawa and things, but it wasn't really. The Eastern Front as Russia would have been a better
definitely made
addition
sense, yeah.
rather than adding the Pacific Front.
Yeah, I can see what you
Well,
mean. It was
Hey,
what I
hard to
guys,
sell.
guys,
Well, what-
THQ made. I know this is a bit off topic, but THQ made Destroy All Humans. Does anybody remember Destroy All Humans?
Oh, Destroy All
Oh,
Humans! was
yes.
great until they made the third one.
God,
I don't even know.
Also, they made Darksiders 2, which I completely forgot about.
Yeah,
Wait,
so-
wasn't that the game that had the ass probes and didn't have the excuse of being South Park?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah,
Really?
but it was-
You
it
got
was-
you got like DNA to unlock upgrades by anally probing people until their
Oh.
brains exploded.
Oh,
Oh
Jesus.
god.
It's kind of weird.
It's a lot of anal probing.
Yeah.
It is.
Destroy All Humans
So-
was actually quite a fun game.
It was brilliant, like especially whenever you unlock like the super death ray for the UFO and you just fly through towns scorching people.
Jesus.
To be young
It
again.
was fun. I mean, it wasn't some sort of masterpiece or anything, but it was an enjoyable romp. THQ taken from us too soon.
And yeah, RTS games. I'm just so sad that there aren't any more. And was it because they weren't making money? I mean, do we know?
I believe so. Yes.
No, they
In
must have. They were not making money. They went
Because my
bankrupt.
brother also works.
No,
in
not
the game
THQ
company.
specifically, but RTS games.
Yes, my brother worked in a.
Niche.
Oh yeah,
niche.
Trey, your brother, he works.
Yeah, he works in a gaming company. Worked in the gaming company. He worked for Codemasters.
Oh.
Now he was like part of Lord of the Rings Online because they actually have the servers for Lord of the Rings
I
Online.
didn't know that. Shit.
Yeah. And also they tried making this MMO racing game, which was nothing great and so on.
Oh, I heard about that.
Yeah. Now, what they basically do is they look at other companies, different genres of games and so on, see what they're doing because they have like severe access to things that obviously the public wouldn't really know about. And according to him, RTSs just didn't make money. They just weren't a viable financial option to put all of your work and labor in to try and get a profit from it. It was just too high a risk.
Just turn out Call of Duty the next one and make infinity $1 billion. Kind of the prospect of.
Yeah, the thing is,
yeah.
for you to bring out a brand new title that's not following up from anything, nothing to back it up, it's a very high risk.
Yeah.
And, for RTS games. And that was a problem. Or is the problem, by the looks of it still, because nothing's coming out. I'm not
bizarre.
hearing of anything new
Because
coming
yeah,
out.
like surely Command and Conquer 3, that was a success. But they made their money back off that, and quite well.
Tiberium Wars was a success, yes.
And it was good. And Kane's Wrath, I think, made money as well.
Kane's Wrath was a brilliant addition, yeah.
Yeah, but and then what?
Then
What was Tiberium?
Twilight came out.
Tiberium Twilight, like who? Why because like that's where I get confused because Command and Conquer was still making money, like hand over fist. At least I think so. And then they were like, "Oh no, we have to change it," even though it was working. It's the complete opposite of the
See,
logic that is
it's-
prevalent in other genres.
Yeah, I think what they wanted to do was try and switch it up and shake it up and try this new direction
Which is
that they
the
thought would be
opposite.
successful.
Yeah, which is the
Unfortunately, it was getting rid of Tiberium,
Yeah. Oh god, so
getting rid
dumb.
of base
So dumb.
building.
Like, don't get me started on how they fucking neutered
What's
the
brilliant
Tiberium.
about it? What's brilliant about Tiberium Twilight was some of the units in it were brilliantly fun and really cool. Like the Nod sort of super cyborg robot guys, they were really fun. But
Yeah.
it was just a heartless, boring game.
Yeah.
The plot to it was quite interesting. The big reveal about Kane finally, but then
Everybody knew that.
and it was done okay. But yeah, it was just such a slap in the face and crap.
Yeah.
Oh, like only
A
you would
damning,
know about that, wouldn't you,
damning
James?
review.
And this is coming from a guy who enjoyed Stormrise
No, you
momentarily.
didn't. Don't say that shit on air. I'm gonna have to bleep that. Oh, whip select.
And
It would have been
I'll
good if
select the whip.
Yeah, it would have been good if they hadn't had whip select or at least made it optional. It
Or
just
the
made playing it
camera
on the
had
PC appalling.
Well, what's whip select?
No one knows.
Stormrise JugHead was a spiritual successor to KKND.
What?
Yeah, it was a
Yeah, it
spiritual
kinda
successor
was,
to KKND.
wasn't Oh.
But one of the defining features of Stormrise was the addition of a mode of control called Whip Select. And it was basically, instead of like moving the camera around with analog sticks on consoles or with the mouse, you had to like press a button and hold it and then like whip the controller sticks or your mouse in the direction and it would just select a unit. And it was appalling because it just meant that you would accidentally select the wrong unit. And instead of, like, if it's like, oh no, these units are being attacked on this side of the map, you couldn't just scroll over to it. You had to whip select.
It's a whip towards them.
You had to whip towards them. And if you didn't highlight them, you missed, so you didn't move. So it just meant actually maneuvering with the map was impossible. And it was just appalling. But the game would have been quite fun and quite good had they not added this for no reason.
It had like quite a strong art design. I was pretty intrigued by the world, but the fucking whip! Why? Just why?
That said, it was also released quite close to Halo Wars, and it was just oh dear.
And Halo Wars is quite good. It's just that we've had good RTSs. They're
Guys,
getting
I'm
fewer.
gonna cite maybe another nail in that coffin. The game, the Windows version requires Windows Vista as the engine has been built.
It has
on
to be
DirectX.
Vista.
Yeah,
Oh.
built and
Oh,
designed on
dear.
DirectX 10.1.
Oh,
So it
dear,
requires
dear.
Windows Vista. Has anyone ever encountered that? I mean, everyone's always had
That's
that problem.
bizarre.
If you go back to play a game, and usually it's like, for example, Command and Conquer Firestorm for me kills my Windows 7 powerful
It's like,
laptop.
what is this?
But I don't know. If I came across something and it said requires Windows Vista, I think I'd just go, nope.
I think I would
done.
throw it on the ground,
Yeah.
cut off my hand, burn it, and salt where I
Yeah,
bury it.
it's like I went back to install Titan Quest ages ago, and it wouldn't work because the amount of RAM available to my laptop at the minute scared it. And it's like it was basically I had so much RAM that it thought I didn't have enough RAM because its counting mechanism ticked over to like less than it needed.
Oh my god.
It was just old games.
Oh, that's amazing.
Titan Quest's operational on Steam at the moment, gents.
It's
So you know.
fantastic.
Yeah, Titan Quest was a phenomenal game because it did the thing of just the ancient world and mythology is really cool.
Oh yeah.
Let's just have you fight satyrs.
Age
Actually,
mythology. How awesome is Age mythology? Sorry.
Oh, Age of
Oh, it was
Mythology
so
was
awesome.
amazing.
So-
This
It
is
was
a
so
very
fantastic.
interesting question, guys. About Henry with Sacrifice. Do you guys consider Sacrifice to be an RTS or an RPG game?
No one here has played Sacrifice but me.
Sorry,
What is sacrifice?
Sacrifice
It's ancient.
is
It's from like
very old
1993.
Yeah, I played it in the year
Oh, it was like a
2000.
DOS game, or
No,
It's-
Windows 90...
98. I think it was.
98, holy shit.
that would be surprising for 1993 release.
Yes, it would.
You know, it was
Well, I mean, one of those things must be
Definitely.
Andrew.
I guess
it's
I
a
don't know that.
three-dimensional game and everything. I think it was right before 2000 or so. Now, that game, it's basically you control a wizard. Now, it's on Steam now anyway, so
I'm
if you
just looking. I'm
But-
looking at the cover art and feeling like
Yeah,
it
it's
was
really
plagiarized.
It's
I'm
a
feeling
really
like it
old
was plagiarized from something, but I don't know what.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's basically you control a wizard, you follow a god, so it can be god of death, god of life, earth, fire, air, whatever.
All the usual.
And
shit.
then you have that's essentially you selecting a race in brackets. So you summon minions, so you kill locals or other sorcerers or so to get their souls. You use those souls as a resource to summon monsters that are like the god. So you can get flesh golems if it's a death god or anything like that. And then you fight other wizards with their armies and their different units. And it's third person, which I believe is very interesting.
It
That's
was
a
very
perfect
interesting
mix.
combination, yeah.
Yeah, it's a perfect mix between an RPG and an RTS. Very successful. I mean, the fact that it's on Steam now and you can buy it now all over again just is proof of that.
I don't know if it was successful at the time, but it certainly got cult status.
It
I always
was.
meant to give it another go. But yeah, I don't know, and it's strange because that's the kind of risk taking and innovation that
Yes.
that worked in RTSs back then.
It
And
did
now, for some reason, they're doing this weird, unnecessary thing. Like in football games, same thing every year. Call of
Yeah,
Duty,
they do
same
say-
thing every year. With RTSs, they're like,
It's-
it works, but we have to mangle it for some reason. I mean,
Yeah.
I almost wish they would give Command and Conquer the Call of Duty treatment, just so there would be games.
Maybe,
It's
maybe,
bizarre.
maybe they were dropping off. Maybe they were dropping off in sales. Then I mean, it's not like
Just a
gaming
bit.
companies to sniff at
Yeah,
at
they
easy
look at
money.
the
I mean, maybe that
spreadsheets.
is what was happening. They were not making
I mean,
money.
a big problem that RTS has always had was they had a very large barrier to entry. I mean, anyone can pick up Call of Duty and sort of know what's going on. That
Very
wasn't quite
true.
true for RTSs.
Yeah,
And one of the problems that a lot of RTSs have is, if you know how to play an RTS, you find the tutorial experience the most painful, eye-gouging experience.
click
But
on
if you
the
don't know how
guy.
to if you don't know how to play, you need a tutorial. And sometimes RTSs make this horrible mistake where they say mandatory tutorials for the veteran players. But also sometimes they would skimp on it, and that would really punish the new players as well.
Yeah, yeah.
It's only if only they somehow made the tutorial optional.
Optional.
As in somehow introduce this environment where you could learn to play the game, but if you already knew, you could find a skip button.
In fairness,
I've heard of
that's
such
something that applies to almost all games. And it's like a lot of the Assassin's Creed games, for example, are a perfect example because I'm pretty sure in every Assassin's Creed game it handholds you through the same learning how to assassinate tutorials that are just awful if you've played every game in the series, which no sane person should have.
No, Assassin's Creed, I have always been massively underwhelmed by Assassin's Creed. I don't understand the fuss.
I
THQ
enjoyed
like
Black
Red
Flag. I enjoyed Black Flag up until the point where it was, I don't know, it ran out of steam and I wasn't engaged by the story. But the things that I enjoyed about Black Flag weren't anything to do with the combat really or anything. I enjoyed sailing along and the epic feeling of exploration in my pirate ship, which isn't really anything to do with the Assassin's Creed franchise.
Yeah,
it was
just
just
something
an amazing feeling.
it's a buoyancy aid to the Assassin's Creed franchise.
It's more of a Wind Waker thing than it is a Assassin's Creed thing.
The next one is, oh Jesus Christ, passing moral judgment on EA.
Can I start?
Is it really passing moral judgment? I mean, ultimately, like EA, lots of controversy there. Lots of gamers don't like them, but like they are ultimately a company that needs to make money and has to care about their own employees' salaries and stuff. They have to pay people if they need to make money.
More than their own employees' salaries, their stockholders' shares. I think is probably the. The shareholders. I think more than employee salaries, but yes.
Yeah, they are still business.
They broke my neck.
Can I start the ball rolling on? I think on just. The reason everyone seems to dislike EA games so much because it's a company that gets tunneled on a lot. So basically, from the perspective of the consumer, EA games typically practices in big anti-consumerist business practices, needless microtransactions, and really the thing that really annoys me is whenever I feel that EA gets involved with a game company, it acquires it almost always, in the sake of making the game more popular, completely and utterly drives everything that was ever good about it into the ground. And there are numerous examples of when they have done this. And notable ones, I would say, Dead Space 3 took a noticeable dip because I feel EA pressure. I feel the Mass Effect BioWare game, or the BioWare Mass Effect games, took an awful hit from being associated with EA. Command & Conquer literally died for being associated with EA.
Oh god, that's right.
And let's not forget Dungeon Keeper.
No, the wound is too fresh.
I was going to talk about Dungeon Keeper recently because Dungeon Keeper is what I thought about. I thought about this conversation and how we were going to have it when I started playing the tablet version of Dungeon Keeper.
No.
And my god, is it evil!
Yeah.
It is literally unplayable without microtransactions.
It was even on a BBC News.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is ridiculous. It will take one of your imps 4 hours to tunnel through a wall unless you spend some crystals, which don't generate naturally. You have to buy them with microtransactions.
Jesus.
You get full of them to start with at the game, but if you were to start spending them, you'd use it up pretty quickly. And after that point, well, I mean, you want to tunnel through, like, there's probably maybe about 5 or 6 of these things to go before you get to the next area. Would you like to spend 4 hours tunnel through all of them? I don't think so. Your resource gathering rate is appalling. The way to speed that up, oh, you guessed it, more microtransactions. It is truly the fact that someone sat down and approved it and thought that people would actually spend money on the transactions as opposed to saying through it is insane. It is one of the worst things and the most shameless things that I have heard. And basically, my point on EA was, you can't just hate EA forever because of the things that they've done in the past. And then I played Dungeon Keeper, and then I realized they have learned nothing from all the horrible controversy.
Well, my problem was that microtransactions are okay to have in games. They can be done well, but Dungeon Keeper was a game just built for microtransactions. Like, you could not play it with them.
Yeah, Jesus Christ. It's appalling. It's a money trap. It's a money farm, and there's nothing of value there at
Wow.
all. Which, when you consider what Dungeon Keeper used to be, the just unstoppable glory of the original two Dungeon
It was
Keeper
fantastic.
They're
But that
amazing.
was made by Bullfrog, the
Yeah.
original. Remember that? Okay, they
And
were taken up by
technically,
EA.
right, this is the part where the water gets muddy, because people like to think, and myself included, of EA as this big, monstrous, like Immortal Engines style, greasy city of destruction, going around chewing up smaller companies and recycling them into crap. But technically, Dungeon Keeper 2 only got made because EA was willing to take the apparent risk that was Dungeon Keeper 2. Even though, like, I know Dungeon Keeper 1 was fantastic, I don't understand why Dungeon Keeper 2 was a risk. So I'm maybe not going
Well,
to give them too much credit for that.
guys,
But, yeah.
I have a little exercise for EA, which I'd like to do. So this is EA. Once upon a time, did not own everything.
Oh my god.
I'm gonna name some notable franchises. I'm not 100% sure when some of these franchises got picked up by EA, but I know for a fact some of them were not EA franchises at the start. So let's have a little think about things that have taken a mysterious, sudden, and drastic drop in quality for some reason over recent years. So, Command and Conquer.
Yeah.
Well, Command and Conquer 4 literally killed the series.
In one
Dead.
go. Like, from
Medal
its
of
height.
Honor. Medal of Honor, I'm not 100% sure if that was always EA. But I don't think it was.
No, it wasn't actually.
And you know what? Has it got worse over the more recent years?
Little bit.
Yeah. So Dead Space, I would say Dead Space 3, the one where EA exerted at least the most pressure, is the worst game of the series.
Yeah. Oh, the moons. Oh.
Mass Effect. So we've got the Mass Effect DLC, or the Mass Effect Ending Crisis.
Oh.
We have Dragon Age 2 in general. We have, Bullfrog, which, I mean, EA may have once upon a time taken the risk on it, but also no more games were made. There's a lot of companies that were bought up and nothing was heard from them, and a lot of things that have just been ruined completely.
They do. They just, and the sick thing is, and people remarked on it at the time, was when they actually said, "No, we're going to be good, and we're going to start new franchises, and we're going to be brilliant." And they made Dead Space, and Dead Space was brilliant, and they did something else, and it was class. But then everyone started to lose their jobs. Like, they started to concentrate on trying to do interesting and original, creative projects, and it fucked them. They hemorrhaged money out of every orifice. So what are we to learn from this?
You see,
Is it possible to be creative and interesting and still make money?
You see,
Yeah.
the thing is, Martian, with EA, the problem is the reason why they're such a big ruse to everyone is basically
You asshole.
if it's a company, it's essentially a company. Now, a
Holy shit.
company.
Essentially.
Essentially,
Yeah,
more or
well,
less.
well, okay, it is. Yeah, it is.
For
But now
for lack of a
company-
better term.
Now, a company need to have their managers in it, correct? Yeah? There are many different ways of managing your staff. Now, EA, being what they are, I think they went too much into the direction of, we need to get things out so we can make money. The more games that get released, the more money flows in, the better. So you guys are going to work hard. You're going to work overtime. I mean, it was over the news how many of the people just kept working overtime, and now it's one of the worst companies to work for because of that. So you work overtime, you get all of those games out. Quality, well, you got to make sure about the quality. But we don't have much time. Just get it out there. Just get it out. We need profit, see? Yeah. And that, I believe, is the reason why it got so bad. Now, a gaming company is unique in its own way, in which basically you need to have a relaxed environment for gaming companies so that you can produce quality, but you also obviously need to get the business in order to be able to sell these franchises as well as, giving the quality. So it's a trade-off. And I think EA tilted too much to the management side of things and less on the, you know what, guys, I'll give you a chance to just go through these things, relax. If you look at ArenaNet, for example, with Guild Wars 2, they spent ages making the game.
They took their
Now, they are on
goddamn
the
time.
completely other end. Like, they have they literally just sit there doing their own thing. Like, they obviously have, I think it's NCSoft looking over them, but I think they're definitely not as bad as EA
They're
ever
definitely much
could
more
be.
to the creative end of the spectrum.
Yes, that's
I
right.
think not necessarily that EA just kind of handily epitomizes a lot of things that people consider wrong with the games industry in their. Well, they kind of have ruined a lot of the things that they had that were good in the quest for what I would say is, developers sort of saying, oh yes, co-op's profitable, and we need to make things more dynamic and interesting and more explosions.
Put
The result,
microtransactions everywhere. See.
the result, Dead Space 3, a game that had nothing to do with co-op, had nothing to do with microtransactions, and had really no need to be like dynamic or dramatic
Yeah.
in the way that they made it. And I think it's like a misunderstanding that a lot of companies make, but EA just handily again and again demonstrates over why people are playing their games in the first place and what is interesting about them. And in their quest for more profits, they just ruin everything that they've ever had.
Yeah. And yet,
I think it's more like. Sorry, Amy, you go on.
I don't really like. I kind of agree with this, but like, I still like the games that EA are releasing.
Yeah,
I still buy them and I still play them, and I still think they're good games. So I don't know. Like, yes, they're a terrible company. Like, they got the worst company in America by this. Like, people.
beat.
in
That
America.
was
Shit.
off the back of people really hammering at it, though.
They got
Yeah,
it.
like, it
you
is
know
a thing that
that,
happened, but
actually,
it's kind of.
guys, they got
Sorry.
it 2 years in a row. And their comments on the issue were the first year they were like, well, of course we're more evil than the bankers who put our country into economic collapse and BP and things like that. We're of course we're more evil than those people. Now we're just going to try and concentrate on making more quality award-winning games. The second year they said we're going to have to seriously start analyzing why this is a thing that people believe about us. And to be honest, you do have to start seriously analyzing it if you win it 2 years in a row, why everyone hates you so much. And then you go ahead and prove, in my opinion at least, that you've learned nothing by releasing that Dungeon Keeper game because someone greenlit it.
I disagree massively.
Yeah, but
like
they
that
made
whole
money from it. You can't.
Adam.
yes, like whenever you say like that was the second year they did that they lost that pool, I don't think you can take those results without a pinch of salt, because the people who look like EA in terms of gamers are people like us.
Yeah.
To what extent do we represent the market? And we are the ones who are going to be voting in these pools more than casual people who will enjoy their games more.
I didn't vote in it at all. I didn't even know that there was such a thing that you could do that. Like,
Well, it's not even so much the case of individuals. It's more the case of populations and different groups of with populations voting. And so I think, like EA are understanding that like they obviously have a massive market research division with people who are trained in this, and they have hundreds and hundreds of people and thousands of dollars to throw at this. And so they can look at their clientele and they can see that people like us who are very into video games, a massive part of how we self-identify is constructed with video games. But when most of their money comes from people who aren't like that and are just like people who their parents buy games for them, really.
Yeah.
Yes, filthy casuals, if you will.
But then,
We're all
I
filthy
don't know.
casuals here.
We're all.
The thing is,
Okay, you're a filthy casual.
I kind of like the way that EA are sort of like, yes, they did terrible things and bought the different companies and stuff.
Yeah.
But like, if you look at the likes of Mirror's Edge, it was made by EA. It was made by their
that was
DICE
during the period when they
subsidiary.
were deliberately taking risks and doing interesting things.
So
The thing about
it was good, and like yes, they make the FIFA games, which are terrible, but like, and they make the Medal of Honor, which was good, but
they made
like,
it.
I haven't played the new ones.
Yeah, Amy's
Well, I
right. Like,
haven't
when was
played
the last
the
time EA made a really good new intellectual property?
It was back during that period when they were intentionally trying to do it, and it screwed them for some reason.
Yeah, and that was the time when the first Mass Effect came out, which was like more than 7 years ago.
I would say like they've done their bit for gaming. Then they have released new interesting IPs, and they've furthered aspects of gaming. So I would say they can sit on their laurels and release the next 90 Maddens.
Oh,
Yeah,
well, excuse
like-
me, James.
Yeah, Amy?
The game I always buy from EA, the game I always buy from EA would be Need for Speed, just because I loved racing games. And like, yes, of course racing games are going to be all the same. There's not going to be any major difference. You're going to race away from the cops, or you can play as the cops. I like that option within it,
think so.
which is kind of cool. But like the way EA bought over Criterion or used Criterion, which made the Burnout series, as well as EA, which was kind of crappy in a way because it made it more like Burnout when it was supposed to be like a quite more glamorous version of Burnout. So I didn't really like that, but I still buy the games because it's like, yep, EA released Need for Speed, I'm going to buy that.
Yeah.
Well, the thing about it is, I think there are some games that really suffer from people misunderstanding why they're good. So, like, in essence, I'm up for what I think makes the best games at the end of the day, and I'm not going to consider it from the company's perspective of relentlessly making profits. But I think Need for Speed is definitely a game series that has... I mean, a lot of people, I think, still say Underground, I think, is the best one. But it's not a game series that's just been ruined, and like people still enjoy it. And there's not really, all of the, say, football games, there's not really any misunderstandings that you can make about football to horribly mess up the games. But whenever it came to a lot of the other things that they acquired, for example, I think the directions they pushed BioWare in with the decisions on their RPG games, and the decisions that they made in Dead Space, the decisions Dungeon Keeper, I think Command and Conquer, a lot of those decisions they made literally killed things that were good. Okay, Mass Effect and Dragon Age aren't dead. Mass Effect is still relatively good. But mistakes were made, and I feel that mistakes were made and issues that EA had some exercise over.
Yeah, this leads neatly to my big revelation. Okay. Are your cats attacking you? Okay. This leads me neatly to what I realized when I was... Remember the whole drama we had when I was like, I'm going to not buy Titanfall because fuck EA. And everyone was like, that's retarded. And eventually I realized it was because the guys who made the evil blood-sucking vampiric revenant that is Dungeon Keeper 3, and the guys who made the first two Dead Space games, which were great, and the guys who decided that Titanfall should be a thing and Titanfall might be good or maybe not and no one can really decide, they're all it's not the same people. EA isn't actually one single entity with one single conscience. It's this enormous, ridiculous, sprawling thing. And to blame one tendril for what another gnarled hook has done, it seems quite silly after a while.
Yeah, well, the thing is you have to remove
all
all
of
the
you're
weeds to get rid of the weed.
You're completely right, Martian, in the sense of what I keep saying with EA. You can boycott a company if you want to, and you do things. You cannot buy games if you don't like the direction that the games are taking in, because the only way you can really influence a money-making company is by not buying things that you don't like.
Yeah.
But whenever it comes to it, you shouldn't boycott EA if you think Titanfall will be good, because if everyone boycotts Titanfall and it is good, well, they won't have learned anything and you won't get any more Titanfall. You'll have ruined something that's perfectly good. I think people should be able to express their dissatisfaction over certain products being with the amount of bad decisions made by EA. You might not be able to, blame one gnarled hook for one tendril's action, but you also need to consider that somewhere at the very top of the company, there's someone who's got a very bad policy in place that should probably be changed. Because obviously, EA is a changing organization. It shifts out. It always keeps the brand EA. But really, if you change all the people, it's not the same company.
Well, we do know it was EA's highest management team that decided that all their games had to have multiplayer components, which is pandering to the wider market. So we know that you can't really expand all their other dumb decisions like take Mass Effect 3's ending. Was that the artistic decision of the developer team, or was that because of some ridiculous management team? I don't know.
Yeah, there's not
spoilers,
because that could have been BioWare and BioWare just making a mistake. But to me, I link BioWare and many of the BioWare mistakes because it was the same guys in charge of BioWare that were the guys who made Mass Effect 1 and the guys who made Knights of the Old Republic, which I think are very strong RPGs that made relatively weaker ones later on. And I think there's a link between so many of these companies that I've listed before and so many of these games that got acquired by EA and then nosedived somewhere along the line.
Yeah,
There's some linking factor. It's happened to too many things, and the things that it hasn't happened to are the things where it's like the next FIFA game because they just released some more footballers.
Yeah,
Like,
it's
so
more football, I
you
guess.
can't really mess it up because people don't want anything different at all, or even really any expansion. They just want to keep it updated with a bit better graphics and maybe some gameplay functions polished. The genre probably stopped meaningfully evolving in any way a long time ago.
Yeah. In fact, it's interesting because you're saying that these are companies that were producing great stuff and then stopped. And it was while they were under EA, they weren't necessarily bought up by EA at some point and then nosedived. But what did happen was the more important these franchises became to EA, the shitter they got. Do you think it was that maybe the more of the percentage of the EA like corporate profits pie chart you are, the more executive attention you get, and the harder it is to do stuff? Because
I think
Command
so.
and Conquer, right? They produced Command and Conquer 3, and they maybe didn't really know how people were going to react to the resurrection of this franchise when that genre was in decline. But then it made a fuck ton of money, and they were like, this is important to us, and they suddenly were looking at it and paying attention to it, and we're
I
like, the
have the
next one will be important.
suspicion. I have the deep suspicion with Command & Conquer. I'm just confirming this now that it was released mostly. I'm not even 100% sure it was released fully finished or that it wasn't rushed.
Oh. Yeah. Like I get the impression is the more money you're making EA, perversely, the more EA are sort of like standing over you and making it difficult to make money. Because Dead Space, the first Dead Space was a huge shot in the dark. People were like, "This is probably gonna be garbage, but fuck it, we'll let them get on with it. Maybe it'll make some money." And then it blew up, and they're like, "Holy crap!" Dead Space 2 still, Dead Space 2 is amazing. I fucking love Dead Space 2.
What I suspect happened was. What I suspect happened was, like you said, as the franchises became more of their profit pie, if you will,
Yes.
they instead took the game from the development team that made it and give it to another team, and therefore the vision of what the game was meant to be was lost along the way.
Did they move them between development teams? Because Visceral made
maybe, like they must have kept the original team, but they must have thrown more money at it in development, which means they must have brought more and more people on the team. So like too many cooks spoil the broth.
Yes,
kind of idea.
Exactly.
I think I think Dead Space is a really easy example of like the reasons why it was so good were the sort of tension and the atmosphere and things.
Yeah,
and what was like really clear is they didn't fire their art guys and replace them with some new EA art guys. They like the vision of the game and how it plays and all of the individual elements, like in terms of mechanics, are really good and clearly the same guys, but they clearly made a design decision at the executive head where they were like, yeah, it needs to have more character interactions and co-op and things, and it just wasn't what the game was about, and that's why the mistakes. And that's that key decision, taking it away from a certain direction, can really make a very damaging impact. For example, I think a damaging impact in Mass Effect 2 was they polished the combat system a lot, and that was really good. That would have been fantastic if they didn't then decide that it was Gears of War crossed with Mass Effect 1 and made it 75% a shooter to 25% an RPG.
There's a saying that goes, if something works, keep it that way.
Yeah, if it ain't broke, don't
It's a very fundamental, big saying. If you know there's something good about the game,
just got wrong.
Keep it. You know, I don't understand why people are often so pressured because because statistically, yes, you have to change to keep things interesting. We all know that. But if there's something good about the game, just keep it in. You can change other things about it, but the core things that made the game so successful, you need to keep. And these things you just listed, Henry, I believe those are the things, like part of the things, that gave the game its unique atmosphere. Well, I say unique, but in combination, if you combine different aspects,
it's just I feel that if there's something particularly strong about a game, you can ignore other flaws.
Yes.
But without a sort of good setting and story, they're generally weakened. And I think, really fundamentally for me, the decisions that are made at the top tier that have damaged those games were ones that really impacted your ability to care at all what was happening, and therefore snowballed a lot of other negative effects into them.
It's almost like James would be in the head of that company.
What?
What?
Your insults don't even make sense. Anyway, yeah, no, it's very strange. And we can
Hey, piss off.
and we can try and figure out what the hell's going on inside EA and why these things go wrong. But I mean, I think it all just comes back to this. It is just such an enormous swirling typhoon of stuff that trying to pin down what's going on in any one part of EA is impossible. I mean, I'd be up there going, fuck you, EA, with the best of them, but at the same time, eventually I came down from all that and I was like, actually, yeah, what does boycotting Titanfall actually accomplish? It will not affect the whole thing. It's like we're trying to create a scapegoat that is EA, but EA is far too vast a thing to even be attributed a single will.
I mean, and the thing about it is, sometimes, especially people like me, don't really talk about their successes. So I'm looking at some of the games that are released, and it's like, they haven't really, to me, had any notable successes recently. But you can see where they were going with certain things. For skateboarding games, Skate's pretty good. In fact, it's probably, for a time, was the best.
I don't even countenance skateboarding games, I'm sorry.
Yeah, but they're still a successful genre.
Sorry to the 9 of you listening.
They released the Harry Potter series.
It was awesome. It was so
which
awesome.
actually,
I loved it.
now that I think about it, now that I actually think about that for a while, I remember playing whenever I was younger. And you know what? The Philosopher's Stone game was really good. Chamber of Secrets game was really good.
Was the shit.
The Prisoner of Azkaban game was amazing. And then I played the Goblet of Fire, and it was really bad. And you know what? The rest of the games, I'm pretty sure, got criticized for essentially becoming Gears of Harry Potter.
Gears of Wand. Oh my.
Yes, and you know what? Actually, that actually sort of neatly brings me back to somewhere along the line, EA made a very bad decision and turned Harry Potter, these like really amazing sort of adventure spellcasting games, into Gears of War with Harry Potter in it, and yeah, Gears of Wand, and that was kind of hilariously bad.
Yeah.
That's actually quite funny.
The fully automatic stupefies.
So there's one thing that we have missed completely that EA do, and I haven't seen much mention of it, but I'm sure if you Google it, you'll probably come across a few examples, but EA are known to stop supporting their games very quickly. As quickly as they release them, they stop supporting them. In other words, if there are online functionalities for a certain game, don't expect that to be there 10 years down the line, or 5 years down the line even.
We talked about this though. We think that maybe some of your expectations in this
No,
are a little bit out there.
However, just first look at the examples, and then you can judge for yourself whether it's a big thing or not. But I'm not talking about online games. There are many. I believe some. Was it? What's a Star Wars game? Knight of the Old Republic. Has that something to do with EA or not?
The second one.
It's a BioWare game, so yeah.
Is it BioWare? No. Sorry.
No, yeah.
There are more than one games out there. On more than one occasion, they stopped supporting the online functionality of games. Just saying, yeah, it's reached its end now. We're just going to stop it and throw it away. Go on with the next one and throw it away. Go on with the next one. Throw it away.
To be fair, Dre, we've talked a lot about EA as a company trying to make money, but at the same time, I think it's a little bit odd to expect them to sustain something that's actually losing the money. I mean,
I believe it's not.
There is. Mm-hmm.
I have to disagree, because not in any other company have I seen this happening before. I can hardly. There are very few other examples where they have discontinued, or stopped supporting a game so quickly and made it completely offline like EA did. I've not seen
which one was it?
It wasn't making them enough money to warrant funding it, Dre.
Yeah, like André, at the same time, like if a Tesco shut down because it said a certain location was unprofitable, would you say that Tesco had a duty to be open in that location? I think
no, it's true, but it is a contract you have to sign. It's just trust for the company, for the people. The people.
Well, I mean, like, if it was
it's something that makes it. Sorry.
It's like if you bought games. It's like if you bought games off of Steam, and then like all of a sudden they just went, Steam's not profitable, so you can't access any of your games or downloads anymore.
No, because you could still play Battle for Middle Earth offline. You could still access the core functionality of the game.
James, I can understand what he's saying to an extent, in that it would make you uneasy about buying a game with the company if you thought that you would lose the ability to play it online after a couple of months. But at the same time, I think there is a distinction between EA's incredibly conservative and greedy design directions and not funding something that's losing them out of the goodness of their heart. I think those are two very
What I
different
will
things.
say,
Guys,
what
does
yeah,
this make any sense? We were talking about Warhammer Online shutting down.
yeah, yeah.
So, okay, right. It
Shit was
was
good.
released. It was released 2008, okay? Right. Shuts down 2013. Apparently, the guys who actually own it are making, they're fighting tooth and nail to try and keep it going. Apparently, they're releasing a free-to-play version and an expansion for it, which
I would play a
I
free to
don't
play
know how.
version. Yeah.
But I mean, I think it's just in those situations. I think Warcraft just kind of kills, or at least that time
It trips
killed
up
a
the
lot of
market.
other MMOs.
Yeah. But for good reason, though, Henry. The other MMOs, comparatively, except for Guild Wars 1, and maybe Guild Wars 2,
Maybe.
Guild Wars 2 still is very new. We can't really say for sure. They still need to establish themselves. I just hope they change the direction which are going with the MMO. That's a topic that's another discussion
It
for
is.
later.
We've got that listed.
But many times, if a certain game type has taken over, there's a good reason for it, and I believe World of Warcraft is a good reason, because they really did put effort in my opinion.
And on that note, I believe we're out of time. So thanks everybody. That was very good, and thanks to both of you for listening. We'll maybe see you next time if we can be arsed. Good night.
Can't
Night.
wait for
Good
when we
night.
have three
Night.
listeners.
Don't have
Damn,
nightmares.
blast.
I can't wait for when we have three listeners and the third one leaves us for
I
being
can't
insulted.
wait for when I can do a podcast without you, James.